Hello friends, I am Mr. Ghost, and I am here to help you today. I know, you use these videos to fall asleep. So, before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from, and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable, and relax. I remember the day I arrived in that small, quiet town. The place had dirt roads and old storefronts. The people I saw looked tired and spoke softly. I had driven for hours along empty highways, passing dry fields and patches of dead grass. When I spotted the old mansion on a hill at the edge of town, it looked run down and empty. There were boards across some windows and a fence that leaned to one side. Even so, I decided to rent it. It was cheap and nobody seemed interested in it. But from the first night I spent there, I knew something was off. Something was in the walls, calling my name, moving things in the dark, filling the air with a smell like burned paper. I had never felt so uneasy in my life. I drove my car up the dirt path that led to the house and parked near the front door. The sky was cloudy, and I could see the chipped paint on the porch. The landlord, whom I spoke to on the phone, told me he handled several properties in the area. He never gave me his name, just a short, gruff introduction. He said the place had never had a registered owner. He said it belonged to no one. He seemed eager to get a renter. I remembered nodding and accepting his terms without thinking twice. I was broke and tired of living in a cramped apartment in another state. I wanted a large space where I could have some quiet. I didn't ask questions. My first step inside felt strange. I pushed open a heavy wooden door and walked into a large foyer with a broken chandelier. The floorboards creaked. There were no lights except for the dim afternoon sunlight seeping through old curtains. The hall smelled stale and dry. The walls had old wallpaper peeling at the corners. I tried turning on a light switch, but nothing happened. I had brought a flashlight in the car, so I went back, grabbed it, and started shining it into each room. The house had large rooms with dusty furniture and old portraits on the walls. I didn't recognize any faces in those portraits. Some looked like men in old-fashioned suits, others like women in plain dresses. No names, no plaques. Just these old frames hung unevenly. In the kitchen there was a wooden table and a few mismatched chairs. I opened a door that led to a small pantry with empty shelves. I checked the stove. It was old and not connected to anything. I opened drawers in the kitchen and found no utensils or cookware. Everything was empty. I carried my suitcase upstairs. There were 3 bedrooms. Each had a bed frame without a mattress, an empty dresser, and a dirty window. The floor felt gritty under my shoes. I planned to sleep in a sleeping bag for now. I wanted to clean the place over the next few days. I set my sleeping bag down in the largest bedroom at the end of the hall. The window overlooked the backyard, which was overgrown and had a few broken statues near a collapsed shed. That first night, I had trouble sleeping. I was alone in a big, quiet house. There was no traffic outside, and the town was distant. I could hear my own breathing in my heartbeat. Around midnight, I heard something inside the walls. At first, it sounded like scratching or shuffling. I lay still, listening. It got louder, like someone sliding their hand along the inside of the wall. I stood up and pressed my ear against the wallpaper. I heard a muffled voice. It said my name. It wasn't loud. It sounded like a whisper, but I recognized it. I backed away, feeling my arms tense up. I grabbed my flashlight and looked around. The room was empty except for my bag and a chair I had dragged in from another room. I turned on my flashlight and waited. The voice stopped. I waited for a long time until I finally lay down again and tried to rest. But I didn't really sleep. The next morning, I felt tired. My eyes burned, and my mouth was dry. I walked through the house, opening windows and trying to get some fresh air inside. The dust floated in the sunlight. I checked the rooms downstairs and noticed something strange. A chair that I remembered leaving against the far wall of the living room was now in the center of the room. I stared at it. I tried to recall if I had moved it before going to sleep, but I knew I hadn't touched it. I shrugged, picked it up, and set it back against the wall. I thought maybe I had remembered it wrong. I checked the other rooms. Everything looked the same as when I arrived. I decided to head into town and see if I could find a hardware store.
I needed light bulbs and cleaning supplies.
I also wanted to talk to someone about the house. Maybe ask if anyone knew its history. I found a small hardware store on the main street. Inside it smelled like old wood and metal. The man behind the counter was bald and wore a stained apron. I asked for light bulbs, bleach, and a broom. He raised an eyebrow at me and asked where I was staying. I told him I had rented the old mansion on the hill. He stopped what he was doing and looked at me with a blank face. He said he never knew anyone to rent that place. He said it was always empty. I asked if he knew its history. He shrugged and said he didn't know who owned it. He said it had been around for decades, maybe longer, and that people avoided it. I asked why. He said people heard things in that house. Then he changed the subject and went back to stocking shelves. I paid and left. I spent the day cleaning the hallway and dusting the stairs. I replaced a few light bulbs, but half the sockets didn't work. I found a broom in the corner of a closet. Its handle was cracked. I swept piles of dust and small bits of broken glass. I found a rolled-up newspaper in one corner of the living room. It had no date, no headlines, just blank pages with smeared ink. It smelled like old, damp paper. I tossed it aside. That night, before I went to sleep, I tried to block out any sound. I wore earplugs. I also decided to keep my flashlight ready. I turned off the few lights that worked and got into my sleeping bag. I closed my eyes, but my mind wouldn't settle. I kept thinking about that voice. It had said my name. How could
It know my name.
I must have dozed off because I woke up to complete darkness. The earplugs had fallen out. I heard my name again. It was inside the walls, behind me. I sat up and shone my flashlight around the room. The floorboards looked the same. The walls looked the same. Then I smelled something. It was a sharp smell like burnt paper. I sniffed the air. It was stronger near the door. I walked into the hallway. The smell came and went, like a gust of air pushing it around. I walked slowly, checking each room. I found nothing burning, no smoke, no ashes. Then I noticed a portrait on the wall at the end of the hallway. It was a painting of a man with a thin face and round glasses. I swear the eyes in that portrait were pointed at me. I remembered earlier when I first saw it. I thought the man's eyes were looking to the side. Now they faced forward. I stood there holding my flashlight up, feeling my heart beat faster. I stepped closer and reached out to touch the frame. The portrait felt cold. I tapped it. It was solid. I turned away for a second and then looked again. The eyes were still looking straight ahead at me. My stomach tightened. I backed away, turned, and headed downstairs. I didn't want to sleep near that thing. I ended up lying on the living room floor using my jacket as a pillow. I left one lamp on.
I didn't sleep well.
Every time I closed my eyes, I thought I heard movement in the rooms above me. Something sliding along the walls, whispering. Once I thought I heard footsteps, but when I aimed my flashlight up the stairs, nothing was there. The next day, I searched the house more thoroughly. I checked closets, the basement, and the attic. The attic was empty except for a few boxes of papers. Most were blank or charred at the edges. Some smelled like they had been burned before. I found no old letters, no documents, nothing to explain who lived here or what happened. The basement was just a cold, damp room with stone walls. No sign of any wiring or pipes that might explain the noises. I decided to talk to the landlord again, but I had no direct number for him. I only had the one he used to call me, and every time I tried to call back, nobody answered. When I drove into town and asked around, nobody knew who managed the property. The hardware store guy just shrugged. A woman in the general store said she had never heard of a landlord who rented that place. She said it usually stood empty. She sounded confused when I described the man I talked to on the phone. I drove back to the house feeling frustrated. I tried to stay calm. I forced myself to think logically. Maybe I had dreamed the voice. Maybe I had moved that chair without remembering. Maybe I was tired and hearing things. But then I entered the house and noticed the smell again, like burnt paper. It was in the foyer this time. I followed the smell into a small room off to the side, a room I hadn't paid much attention to. Inside I found a pile of old books on the floor. I hadn't seen these before. I was sure they weren't there yesterday. I kneeled down and picked one up. The pages were blank and crumbled in my hands. They smelled burnt. I dropped them and backed out of the room. I went upstairs to check the bedroom. My sleeping bag was moved. Instead of lying flat near the window, it was rolled up against the door. I had not done that. My flashlight, which I had placed beside the sleeping bag, was now on top of the dresser. I took a few steps back and felt sweat forming on my forehead. I grabbed my stuff and took it downstairs. I was starting to feel an odd pressure in my head, like a headache building up. I wanted to leave, but I had no place else to go. I didn't have much money. I told myself I would give it one more night, and if I heard anything else, I would pack and sleep in my car. That night, I sat in the living room with the lamp on and tried to read an old magazine I had brought with me. I kept glancing at the hallway. After a while, I heard a creak upstairs. I got up holding my flashlight and walked slowly upstairs. My throat felt dry. I could hear my own footsteps on the wood floor. When I reached the top, I heard my name again. It was coming from behind a wall near the portrait. I stood there, pressing my ear against the wallpaper. I heard a whisper say my name over and over, very quietly. My muscles felt tense. I tried pulling on the wallpaper, but it ripped easily. Behind it, there were old wooden boards. I shone the flashlight through a small gap. I couldn't see anything inside. I tapped the boards. They sounded hollow. I tried to pry one loose with my hands, but it wouldn't budge. I went back downstairs, breathing heavily. I found a screwdriver in my toolbox and returned to the spot. I wedged the screwdriver into the gap and pushed. One board cracked and fell inward. A wave of that burnt paper smell hit my nose. I coughed. I shone the flashlight into the gap. Inside, there was a narrow space, maybe a foot wide, running along the wall. I couldn't fit inside, but I could see old scraps of paper on the floor of that hidden space. They looked charred and torn. I didn't see anyone or anything alive in there. I called out, feeling stupid. I asked who was there. There was no response. I backed away from the wall and stood in the hallway, clutching my flashlight. I felt a chill run through my arms. I heard a voice again, but this time it sounded fainter. It called my name once more and then stopped. I leaned against the wall opposite the hole and waited, expecting something to move. After a few minutes, nothing happened. I slowly went downstairs and sat on the sofa. I stared at the front door, breathing slowly, thinking about leaving right now. I decided to check the house records at the local office the next day. Maybe I could find something that explained this. Maybe old tenants had left notes. Maybe there was some logical reason. I slept a few hours on the sofa, waking up at every little sound. In the morning, I drove to town and found the town clerk's office. It was a small, dusty room with old files. The clerk was an older man with a tired face. I asked him about the mansion. He checked his files and said there was no official record of any owner. He showed me a ledger. It had addresses, deeds, names, where the mansion's address should have been. The line was blank. He said he'd never seen anything like that. I asked if anyone had lived there. He said he didn't know. He asked me why I wanted to know. I said I was renting it. He looked surprised and said he'd never heard of anyone renting it. I left the office feeling more confused. I went back to the mansion one last time. I entered through the front door. I smelled burnt paper again, even stronger this time. The hallway felt colder. The portrait's eyes seemed to stare straight at me. I called out, asking who was there. My voice sounded weak in the empty rooms. I walked through each room, checking the furniture. Things were moved again. Chairs were placed in odd positions. The old frames on the walls seemed crooked. I stood in the foyer for a long time, listening. Nothing. I walked slowly to the door, stepped outside, and locked it behind me before putting the key in my pocket. I stood on the porch, looking at the warped fence in the empty yard. I could still smell that burnt paper on my clothes. I got into my car, started the engine, and sat there looking at the mansion's windows. I didn't see anyone inside. No faces, no movement, just old glass and torn curtains. I decided I'd seen enough, backed out of the driveway and left, telling myself I would never return. My heart was still pounding, and my hands felt clammy on the steering wheel. As I drove away, I could almost hear my name, very faintly carried on the wind behind me. I tried not to think about it. Instead, I just kept driving, watching the road ahead. I slammed the door of my car, gripped the steering wheel, and stared straight ahead into the dense fog. I breathed in and felt the stale air inside the cabin. There was no traffic, no lights on the horizon, and no landmarks except for the vague shapes that faded in and out as I crawled forward. I'd been driving for what felt like hours. My arms felt stiff, my eyes burned, and the engine hummed at a low, steady pitch. I couldn't remember where I started or why I was here. All I knew was that I was alone on this road, and something was very wrong. I pressed the gas pedal and moved ahead at a slow pace. The headlights only illuminate a short distance in front of me. Everything else is hidden by a thick white fog that never thins out, shows no signs of lifting. I see shapes drifting through it. Shapes that vanish as soon as I look directly at them. They move in a slow, twisting way, as if they're alive or at least aware of my presence. I try not to think about it and keep my focus on the yellow line at the center of the asphalt, but I notice something repeating. On my left, there's a twisted tree with no leaves. It leans to one side. Its bark is dark and uneven. Then, after driving another short distance, I see a rusted sign on the right. I can't read what it says because the paint is almost gone. The metal is bent and corroded. I pass it. A moment later, a small, empty gas station appears. There are no lights on. There's a single pump that's old and scratched, and a glass door that reflects my headlights. There's no one inside. I roll by it at low speed, checking my mirrors. After a few hundred yards, I reach another twisted tree, another rusted sign, and another empty gas station. It's the same exact sequence: tree, sign, station. Then again tree, sign, station. I feel sweat forming on the back of my neck. My hands are damp. I let go of the wheel with one hand and wipe my palm on my pants. I look at my phone. No signal. The battery icon is fine, but there's no service. The time on the display seems stuck. The minutes aren't passing. I turn on the car radio and get static. I try changing stations, but nothing comes through. The engine rumble, the light static, and my breathing are the only sounds. I slow down and stop the car. The engine idles. I feel the vibration through my seat. I look over my shoulder, expecting another car or some headlights from behind. There's nothing, just the road, the fog, and that twisted tree. I open the window slightly. The air outside feels thick and cold. It smells damp and stale like wet cloth. I listen. I hear a voice. It's gentle, like a person speaking in a calm tone, but I can't understand the words. I listen harder. There are several voices. They overlap in quiet whispers. They sound patient, but firm, like they're waiting for me to do something. I can't see anyone. There are no shapes approaching the car. The fog moves in slow patterns, forming outlines that look like people 1 second and then vanish the next. The voices say something like, "Come step out over here." I'm not sure. I only catch fragments, but they all sound inviting. They're not threatening, but they don't stop. I roll up the window and grip the wheel again. My heart is beating fast. My mouth feels dry. I don't know where I am, or how to get out. I put the car into gear and continue forward. Soon enough, I see the same rusted sign and the same gas station. I feel a lump in my throat. I try speeding up. I press the pedal and watch the speedometer climb. The headlights stretch farther ahead, but the scenery still repeats. Tree, sign, station. Tree, sign, station. The voices don't fade. They seem to grow slightly louder. They say, "Leave the car. Come here. Follow us." I try not to listen. I stare at the road and keep driving, hoping something will break this cycle. After several loops, I slow down again. Maybe I can turn around. I check my mirrors, see nothing, and make a slow U-turn on the empty road. The tires grind on the asphalt, and my headlights swing across the dark shapes in the fog. I face the other direction and drive back the way I came, but nothing changes. After a short distance, I see the same twisted tree on the same side of the road, the same sign, the same gas station. It doesn't matter which direction I go. It's always the same sequence. I turn off the engine and sit in silence for a moment. The voices remain. They whisper in a gentle, repetitive way. "Come out. You can stay there forever. We won't hurt you. Just come." I feel goosebumps on my arms. I rub my forehead and think about what to do. The car is my only comfort. The seat is familiar. The smell of old upholstery and stale coffee in my cup holder feels normal. Outside, everything is strange and cold. I decide to check the gas station. Maybe I can find a phone, a landline or something that connects me to the outside world. I open the door and step out. The ground feels damp. The fog touches my face. It has a clammy texture. I walk slowly toward the gas station. The pump is silent. The handle is old and cracked. The building is a small structure with one narrow door and a dusty window. I peer inside. There's a counter, empty shelves, no products, and a single stool. There's no person, no phone, no lights. I try the door. It opens with a creak. Inside it smells like old wood and stagnant air. I check behind the counter. There's no cash register, no phone, no papers. Just an empty space. I hear the voices again. They seem closer. They're not coming from a speaker or any device. They're just there. I look back through the door and see my car idling in the fog. I left the engine running. The headlights shine on the twisted tree outside. The voices say, "You need to leave the car behind. It's not going to help you." I clench my jaw and step outside again. The fog swirls around my ankles and legs. I feel a chill on my skin. I don't see anyone. I call out, "Who's there?" My voice sounds weak. There is no response besides the steady whispers. They never stop. They keep inviting me, but they never say who they are. I return to my car and get inside. I close the door and lock it. The central lock clicks. I feel a bit safer behind the glass. I drive again. The cycle continues. After a few loops, I try a different tactic. I stop near the twisted tree and examine it. I roll down my window and shine a flashlight on it. The bark is rough and cracked. There are no markings. It looks normal, except it's always the exact same tree in the exact same position. After I pass it, I come to the rusted sign. I stop there too. The sign is a simple rectangle of metal bolted to a wooden post. The paint is faded, and I think I see the outlines of a word, but it's too unclear to read. I run my finger over it, and flakes of rust stick to my skin. The material is solid, not an illusion. I move on to the gas station again. Same scene, same emptiness. The voices keep pushing me. Stop fighting this. Step into the fog. We can guide you. I refuse to leave my car behind. I get back on the road and drive faster. I press the horn and hold it down. The sound is loud but doesn't change anything. The loop continues. I try turning off my headlights to see if I notice anything different. Without headlights, I see only darkness and swirling shapes in the fog. I can't drive safely like that, so I turn them back on. I think about breaking a window in the gas station or ripping down the sign, but I doubt that will help. My hands shake. My mouth is dry. I take a sip of bottled water from the car's cup holder. The water is stale and warm, but it helps a little. I feel my heart pounding in my chest. My forehead is sweaty, so I wipe it with my sleeve. I realize I have no real plan. I consider just walking into the fog. But where would I go? The voices say they will guide me, but why should I trust them? They haven't shown themselves. They just keep whispering. Yeah, I've tried everything else. I drive a few more loops, the same pattern. Tree, sign, station. The repetition never ends. The fog never clears. The night never turns to day. My phone still has no signal. The radio remains static. My body is tired, and my eyes ache. My neck feels stiff. I try to massage the back of my neck with one hand while steering with the other, but it doesn't help much. I feel a dull ache in my shoulders. Eventually, I park in front of the gas station again. I sit there with the engine running and headlights on. I listen carefully. The voices are calm and patient. They say, "We are waiting. You cannot keep driving in circles. We are not going away." I inhale slowly, exhale slowly, and tell myself that I have to try something different, even if it makes no sense. If I keep driving, I will waste fuel and never escape. The scenery will never change unless I change what I'm doing. I turn off the engine and remove the keys. The silence grows thicker. I can hear my breathing and the quiet whispering outside. I open the door and step out. I take a few steps away from the car and wait. The fog swirls around me. My shoes sink slightly into the damp ground. The air is cold. I look around. The gas station is behind me, the road in front of me, and the twisted tree and sign somewhere behind the layers of fog. I call out again. "Who are you? What do you want?" The voices respond at once. "We will show you. Come forward. Leave the car behind and come this way." The direction is not clear, but the tone is certain. I feel my stomach tighten. My hands tremble a bit, but I force them to stay steady. I do not see anyone, but the voices have a weight to them. I consider the risk. My car is my last connection to something normal, but it's useless here. It cannot escape by driving. The road is a loop that leads nowhere. I walk a few steps along the roadside. The gravel crunches under my shoes. The fog thickens, making it hard to see the car behind me. I hesitate and turn around to check. The car's shape is faint through the fog. Although its headlights are off, the outline of the car is still visible. I consider running back to it and trying again, but I know it's pointless. I have tried everything else. The voices say, keep coming. You are close. We are here. I still cannot see them, but the sound is all around me. It feels like multiple people speaking quietly near my ears, but I feel no breath, no physical presence. Still, I follow their instructions. I move farther from the car, step by step. The ground feels the same. The air is cold. The darkness never fades. The voices continue to guide me. They say, a little more. Don't stop now. I walk slowly, keeping my arms close to my body. My heart pounds hard, my legs feel stiff. My back aches. I keep thinking about what I left behind. The car, the road, the gas station, the sign, the tree. They gave me no answers, only repetition. The voices are the only thing that acknowledges my presence here. They respond to me. They seem to want me to move forward. I continue walking. The fog makes it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. My shoes become damp from the moisture. I keep listening to the voices. They say, yes, that's right. Keep going. My body feels tired, but I don't stop. I know that staying at the car was pointless, and driving in circles was getting me nowhere. As I move deeper into the fog, I notice that the voices do not become any louder, but they remain steady. They speak in calm tones, guiding me forward without giving reasons or explanations. I accept it because I have no other choice. I walk until I can no longer see the car or the gas station behind me. The ground is still solid, and I hear the gentle whispering around me. I feel my heartbeat slow down a bit. I am nervous, but not panicking. The voices continue to speak, and I continue to follow them. I take careful steps one after another. The air remains cold, but I grow used to it. I do not know where I am going, but I know that I am leaving the loop behind. The fog still surrounds me, but the repetition and the useless driving are now in the past. I keep going. I listen and move as they instruct. I have nothing else but this path. No one appears in front of me, but I feel a strange sense that I am not alone. The voices never waver. They lead me forward. I do not know what I will find, but I keep walking. I feel my muscles tense and release with each step. I inhale and exhale the cold, damp air. The loop of the road is no longer holding me. The car sits somewhere behind in the fog, silent and empty. The voices say, good, keep going. I do. I moved into that old apartment building last week. It's in the middle of the city, close to my new job. I wanted convenience. I wanted a simple place to rest after work. I got something else. Every night since I settled in, I've heard heavy steps right above me. They scrape along the floor. I hear chains dragging. I hear someone muttering. I can't understand the voice, but it's there. I know what footsteps sound like, and these are footsteps. But the apartment above mine is supposed to be empty. The landlord said nobody has lived there for decades. Still, every night it starts again. I can't ignore it. Something is happening up there. Something that's not supposed to be happening. The building is old and has those narrow hallways. The walls have flaking paint, and the wooden banisters feel rough under my hand. My unit is on the 3rd floor. The place above mine is on the 4th. I tried going upstairs. I went up there on my 3rd night here right after the noises started. I climbed the stairs and stood at the apartment door. I expected to see some old guy ignoring the rules, or maybe some stranger who got a spare key, but the door was locked with a thick padlock. The hallway on the 4th floor smelled stale, like old dust and old wood. There was a small overhead light that flickered. The door was covered in scratches around the old doorknob. I banged on it. I yelled. I heard no voice inside. The noise stopped for a minute or two, but then it started again right behind that door. I listened. A heavy step. A chain rattling on the floor. The same low murmuring. I went back downstairs. I tried to sleep, but the sound kept going until near dawn. I remember rolling onto my side, pressing a pillow over my ear. My heartbeat was tapping in my throat. I felt sweat on my neck. I got up and checked my own door's locks. I walked around my place trying to figure out what to do. Nothing made sense. I kept waiting for it to stop, but it only died down when the sky began to turn gray. I got maybe an hour of sleep that night. The next morning, I called the landlord and asked him to come by. He said he'd swing over in the evening. He sounded annoyed, but I insisted. When I came back from work that day, I smelled something odd. My apartment smelled like burnt incense. I don't burn anything like that. I don't even have candles. It smelled thick and sweet, like something someone would burn in a religious ceremony. I opened all my windows. I walked around checking the corners. I tried to see if maybe it was drifting in from the hallway or from outside. Nothing. It was just there, lingering. I sat on my couch and stared at the ceiling. That's when I noticed little brownish marks in a corner, right where the ceiling met the wall. I pulled a chair over and stood on it to get a better look. The ceiling is old, with peeling white paint and a thin layer of grime. But these marks looked like smudges of dirt. I rubbed my fingertips over them. Dust coated my fingers. The marks didn't form a clear shape, but they looked like something pressed against the surface. I felt stupid and climbed down. I took a wet rag and wiped the area. The marks faded, leaving just the usual dirty paint. That night, the sound started again. I was sitting at my small kitchen table eating a sandwich. It began with a soft thump above my head. Then a dragging sound. Then footsteps. They were slow but heavy. They seemed to pace back and forth. I got up and stood under the spot where I heard them. The footsteps kept going. Then I heard the chain. It sounded like metal sliding along a wooden floor. The murmuring started soon after. It was a low voice, sounding like a man talking to himself, muttering words I couldn't make out. I felt my stomach tighten. I turned off all my lights and tried to listen more carefully. I wanted to know if maybe I could catch a word or two, but it was just a low, continuous murmur, like a prayer or a chant. I grabbed a flashlight and went upstairs again. The hallway was quiet. I tried the door. It was locked. I pressed my ear against the wood. I heard the footsteps clearly right behind that door. I slammed my fist against it. "Hey!" I shouted. "Who's in there?" There was no answer, just the steps and the chain dragging. I felt goosebumps on my arms. The landlord was supposed to come by soon, but he hadn't shown up yet. I hurried back to my apartment and tried to call him, but got no answer. I paced around. The smell of incense grew stronger. I tried to locate its source and followed my nose to my bedroom. The smell was heavier there. I turned on the light and looked around. My bed, dresser, and boxes were still unpacked. On the floor near my bed I saw something new. Dusty handprints. They weren't clear, like a perfect imprint, but they looked like dirty smudges shaped roughly like hands. They led from the ceiling corner to the floor as if something had crawled down the wall and touched the ground. I felt my stomach flip. I backed away, breathing fast, turned on every light, checked my windows, locked, and front door, also locked. I then checked every inch of the place but found no sign of anyone. I tried to clean the floor but the dust marks just smeared. I got a damp cloth and scrubbed until the floor looked normal again, but I couldn't ignore what I saw. That night, I stayed up sitting in my living room, with the TV on low volume. I heard noises all night. The landlord never came. The next morning, I went downstairs and pounded on his door. He lives on the first floor, until he answered looking annoyed. I told him everything. He said the apartment upstairs had been empty for decades. He showed me old paperwork, old keys. He even took me up there. He unlocked the door with a heavy key. I'd never seen before. The apartment was empty. The rooms were bare. No furniture, no lights, no curtains. Just a dusty floor, cracked walls, and a damp smell. We walked around, checking each corner. I saw footprints in the dust, but they were ours. There were no chains, no signs of anyone. We stood there for several minutes in silence. The landlord looked at me like I was imagining things. I insisted I heard noises. He shrugged and said, "Maybe it's the old pipes or the wind." He locked the place up again and told me to get some rest. I went back to my apartment. It was daytime. The place felt normal enough. I showered, had some coffee, and went to work. When I returned that evening, I found new smudges on my bedroom floor. This time they were near the center of the room, 2 hand-shaped marks and a faint outline of something that could be a knee or a foot. I looked at the ceiling. The paint looked disturbed, as if something had brushed against it. I felt my pulse quicken. My mouth went dry. I closed my bedroom door and stood in the living room, not sure what to do. I decided to stay out of the bedroom for now. I tried to read a magazine, but I kept hearing soft creaks in the ceiling. Not full footsteps, just light creaks. I turned up the TV volume. Night fell. The heavy footsteps started again. The chain dragged again. The murmuring returned. I tried to record the sound with my phone. I stood on a chair and held it up to the ceiling. The footsteps sounded even heavier from that close. I felt the vibration under my hand. The chain sound made me grit my teeth. The murmuring was so low that I could barely pick it up, but I hoped the phone would catch something. After a few minutes, I got down and played back the recording. I could hear the footsteps and the chain rattling, but the murmuring was just a faint hum. I forwarded the recording to the landlord. He didn't reply that night. The incense smell returned around midnight. It drifted through the apartment, making my nose sting. I searched every cabinet, every drawer to find if something was burning. Nothing. The smell just existed in the air. I sat on my couch, my body tense, muscles stiff. I looked up at the ceiling. The paint was old and cracked in places. The noises seemed to move around above me. I focused on my breathing to stay calm. My chest felt tight. My shoulders felt locked. I considered leaving right then, just grabbing my keys and going to a hotel. But I didn't have that kind of money to throw away. I had just moved here. I had paid the deposit in the first month's rent. I needed to deal with this. I decided to wait it out a bit longer. Maybe it was some kind of pipe issue. Or maybe someone had a spare key to the upstairs place. Maybe they were messing with me. I waited until the noises died down in the early morning. I barely slept. When I woke up, I felt exhausted. My eyes were sore and dry. That day after work, I spoke to a neighbor on my floor. She was an older woman who had lived there for a long time. She told me that years ago someone lived upstairs, but that person left decades ago. She said nobody had set foot in there since. She knew of no one with a key besides the landlord. I asked if she ever heard anything at night. She shrugged and said she sometimes heard strange noises, but she always thought it was the old pipes or the wind outside. I noticed she avoided looking me in the eye. I thanked her and left. I didn't learn much. I went back to my apartment and kept all the lights on. I searched every inch of my rooms, checking for hidden openings in the ceiling or walls. I climbed on chairs, tapping the ceiling with a broom handle. At one spot near where I found the first dusty marks, the ceiling sounded hollow. I studied that area carefully. There was a slight gap in the corner molding, as if someone had removed a piece of wood and put it back loosely. I tried to pry it open with a screwdriver. The wood shifted a bit. Dust fell into my eyes. I stepped down and wiped my face. My heart beat faster. The smell of incense got stronger again, as if opening that gap let more of it seep in. I decided to try again. I pushed the screwdriver harder. The piece of molding came loose, revealing a small gap between the ceiling and the attic, or some upper crawl space. I shined a flashlight inside. I saw dust floating. I saw old wooden beams. Nothing else. I couldn't fit my head in. I tried anyway, tilting my head sideways and shining the light. I caught a glimpse of something that looked like a metal chain looped around a beam, hanging there. I froze. My hand shook. I tried to get a better angle, but a puff of dust made me cough. I pulled back, eyes watering. I paced around thinking about what I just saw. A chain in the ceiling space. Someone had to have put it there. Maybe that's what I was hearing. But why did it sound like footsteps? And what about the handprints? I sat in the living room and waited for nightfall, keeping my flashlight and phone ready. When the noises started, I rushed into the bedroom and pressed my ear to the gap. The footsteps were clear, louder now. They seemed to circle above me. The chain rattled. I heard the murmuring more clearly now, and it sounded like a low voice whispering short phrases. I couldn't understand the words, but it sounded like a man's voice, rough and steady. My hands started trembling. My breathing got shallow. My heart pounded. I didn't want to stay there anymore, but I felt stuck. I grabbed my phone and called the landlord again. He answered this time. I told him what I found. He said that there's no attic space, that the 4th floor apartment is the top floor. He said there's only a roof above it. I told him I saw a chain. He sounded frustrated. He said he'd come tomorrow morning with a ladder and tools to check it out. I told him to come now, but he refused, saying it was too late. I tried to sleep on the couch, but every time I closed my eyes I heard the steps. I got up and looked at the floor in my bedroom. More dusty handprints had appeared, this time right under the gap in the ceiling. They looked smeared, but clearly shaped like hands and fingers. The incense smell was so strong that my throat felt irritated. I held the flashlight up at the gap. The dust danced in the beam. I spoke out loud, asking who was there. The noises didn't stop. I asked again. Louder. No answer, just the same muttering. I stomped on the floor, screamed that I was going to call the police. Nothing changed. Eventually the noises faded near sunrise. I dozed off for a couple of hours. When I woke, I had a headache and felt nauseous. The landlord came by mid-morning with a step ladder and a crowbar. We went up to the empty apartment above mine. The door creaked as he opened it. The space looked the same as before, just dust and empty rooms. He climbed up where the ceiling met the roof beams and tried to find any crawl space.
He couldn't find anything.
He banged on the beams, shone a light, and saw no chain. He asked me what I was talking about. I told him about the gap in my apartment ceiling. He looked at me like I was crazy. We went back down.
I showed him the gap.
Tis.
We opened it together. He climbed the ladder and stuck his head inside with a flashlight. He said he saw nothing but wood and dust. No chain, no objects. I insisted he check more carefully. He put his hand inside and touched around. He pulled out a handful of dust and some small splinters of wood. Nothing else. I said there was a chain. He said, I must have imagined it. I felt my face grow hot. I knew what I saw, but he just shrugged. He told me that the building is old, that it makes weird noises. He didn't know what to say about the incense smell or the handprints. He told me to clean my place and maybe hire someone to repaint and fix the ceiling. He left, shaking his head. I stood alone in my apartment, feeling shaky. I felt tension in my neck and shoulders, a dull ache in my stomach. I still smelled incense. I checked the floor again. The handprints were faint, but I could still see traces. I wiped them away. Then I went to the hardware store and bought a bunch of wood and nails. I decided to seal that gap myself. I spent the afternoon hammering a thick piece of wood over the opening, sealing every crack, putting duct tape around the edges. I made sure nothing could come through. That night, I waited. The building creaked. The wind blew outside. The city traffic hummed. I listened carefully, waiting for footsteps, a chain, murmuring. Hours passed. Nothing. The incense smell was gone. I touched my ceiling. It felt solid. I finally fell asleep on my couch, exhausted. In the morning, I checked my floor. No new marks. I sniffed the air. No incense. It was just my apartment, old and a bit dusty but quiet. I got ready for work. As I stepped out, I glanced up the stairs toward the 4th floor. Everything was still. I locked my door and left. I didn't know if it was really over, but at least for now, things seemed normal. I knew I'd be on edge at night, waiting to hear those sounds again. But I was ready. I had sealed that gap. If something wanted in, it would have to break through real wood and nails. I hoped that would be enough. I remember the silence. That day in the forest, there was no wind, no rustling leaves, no calls of birds. I had never heard anything like it. Or rather, not heard anything at all. It made my ears feel blocked. I noticed how every step sounded louder than normal. I felt something was wrong from the start, but I went deeper anyway. I just wanted to finish that trail and go home. I left my car about 100 yards from the trailhead. The path into the forest looked normal from where I stood. The sun was bright enough, and the sky was clear. I had water in my backpack, boots with good soles, and a hooded jacket tied around my waist. I had no reason to worry, but my stomach felt tight. The silence made it feel like my ears were underwater. I checked my phone. There were no signal bars. I expected that. I zipped it back into my pocket and went in. As I walked, I noticed how even my breathing sounded too loud. My boots crushed small twigs, and every crack felt like it echoed. The trees looked normal at first glance, tall trunks, rough bark, thick branches. But as I went farther, I noticed that some of the trunks looked bent, as if curving toward the trail. I stopped and looked around. The forest floor was covered in damp leaves and patches of moss. The air felt heavy. When I looked up, I saw branches that seemed to twist in odd angles. I heard nothing. No wind, no small animal movements. I tried to shake it off. I kept walking. My intention was to follow the trail for a couple of hours, then turn back. I had done similar hikes before. This one was supposed to be easy. But after about 20 minutes, I realized the silence was growing denser. I had no sense of time beyond my watch, and started checking it more often. I stopped again, held my breath, tried to hear something, anything. Nothing. It made me feel uneasy. I thought about turning back, but decided to keep going a bit more. The trees around me were tall and close together. They created a sort of tunnel. I could still see sunlight above, but it looked pale and cold. I noticed something strange about the shadows. They seemed to move in a way I couldn't explain. When I took a few steps, I saw my own shadow stretching and shifting. The shadows of the tree trunk seemed to reach out over the ground. I tried to ignore it. I focused on the path. The dirt was dark and damp. My boots left clear prints behind me. At least I knew I could follow them back if I got lost. I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry, so I took out my water bottle and drank. My swallow sounded loud and uncomfortable. I put the bottle back and took a few more steps. My head jerked to the left when I thought I heard something. I waited, but nothing. Just silence. I exhaled and kept moving. After a while, I saw something that made me stop. One of the tree trunks ahead looked like it was bending forward, as if leaning toward the path. I stared at it. The bark was cracked and covered in moss. I stepped closer, and when I reached out to touch it, it felt damp and cold. It didn't move. I realized it was just my mind playing tricks. I turned around and checked behind me. The trail looked empty. Just the same trees and silence. As I kept going, I felt a growing pressure in my head. My forehead was tense, and my shoulders ached. I tried to relax them. I thought about humming a tune, but the silence made me hesitate. I didn't want to break it. I just felt that if I made a sound, something would hear me. That thought made no sense, but it stuck with me. I moved forward step by step. My boots crushed leaves and small sticks, and each sound reminded me I was alone. I shifted my backpack straps and felt sweat under my arms. The silence made the forest feel like an empty room with no furniture. I kept looking around, expecting something to move, a bird or a squirrel, but I saw nothing. After walking for maybe 30 minutes, I thought I heard a voice. I froze. It came from my right side beyond some ferns and thick bushes. It sounded like someone saying my name, just a faint, low whisper. I stood still and stared at the bushes. There was no sign of anyone there. I took a few steps towards them. I parted some branches with my hands, looked inside, saw only moss, wet soil, and old sticks. I listened again. Nothing. I waited. My heart was beating harder. I backed off and returned to the trail. I tried to calm down by focusing on the details in front of me. The texture of the bark, the wet smell of the leaves, the faint odor of damp earth. I heard my own heartbeat in my ears. The silence outside made me more aware of my body sounds. I scratched my chin, pressed my lips together, and walked on. I decided I would turn back after I reached a small creek that was supposed to be about an hour into the trail. I kept my eyes on the ground, just following the path, trying not to look around too much. But my eyes drifted up again and again. I saw shapes in the corners of my vision. When I turned to look directly, I only saw trees. There was a growing feeling that I was being watched. I tried to ignore it, but it got stronger. I felt it on my neck, like the warmth of a sigh. My scalp felt tight. I wiped sweat from my forehead. I kept walking, faster now. My breathing grew uneven. The sound of it filled my ears. Then I saw the figure. At first, I thought it was another hiker. It stood far away, to the left, behind some thick branches. It looked tall and wore something dark, maybe a hooded jacket or a long coat. It did not move. I stopped and stared. I waited for it to call out or wave. It did nothing. I raised my hand as if to greet it, but it remained still. I could not see its face. There was no detail, just darkness under the hood. I shouted, "Hey!" My voice sounded strange. My throat felt dry, and the sound seemed to vanish into the silence. The figure did not react. I shouted again, louder, asking if they needed help. Still, nothing. I took a few steps forward, off the trail, pushing aside some smaller branches. When I reached the spot where I thought the figure stood, I saw no one. There was only a patch of moss and some thick roots protruding from the ground. I turned back to the trail. My legs felt shaky. I did not like this at all. I decided to speed up and reach that creek. I wanted to hear something normal, like the sound of running water. The silence was driving me crazy. As I continued, I started to feel lightheaded. I think I was breathing too fast. I forced myself to slow down and breathe through my nose. The silence remained total. My footsteps sounded louder. I checked my watch. I had been walking for about 45 minutes. I expected to hear the creek soon. Still, nothing. I kept going until I noticed something else. Some of the trees had odd marks on them. I saw faint scratches and stripped bark. I ran my fingers over them. They felt rough and uneven. I didn't know what caused them. There was no smell of sap or resin, just cold, damp bark. I looked around. The marks were on several trees on both sides of the trail. They formed no pattern that I could understand. I thought about the figure I saw earlier. Maybe it was just my imagination, but it felt too real. I looked around more carefully as I walked, stopping every few steps to scan the forest. Eventually, I saw it again. This time it stood behind a tree far ahead. I could only see part of it, the hood, and maybe a shoulder. I could not see arms or legs. I moved closer, slowly, keeping my eyes on it. I wanted to see if it would move away. It did not. It just stood there. When I got close enough to see the details, it was gone again. Nothing was there. Just a trunk and some branches. I felt a chill run down my back. My palms were sweating. I took off my jacket from my waist and put it on, rubbing my arms. The silence pressed in on me. I shouted again, hoping for an echo, but nothing came back. I kicked a stick out of frustration. I just wanted to find the creek, and then turn back. I began to jog. The trail wasn't steep, but the ground was uneven. I had to watch my step. I tripped on a root and fell on my knee, groaning as I stood up. My pants got dirty with damp soil. I brushed them off. My knee hurt, but it wasn't serious. I took a sip of water, feeling the cold bottle in my hand. I kept moving. After some minutes, I noticed something up ahead, a slight movement of branches. I held my breath and watched, but there was no sound. The branches swayed, but there was no breeze. It stopped after a few seconds. I approached the spot and saw nothing unusual, just leaves and bark. I started feeling desperate for some normal noise. I thought about tapping the trunks. I picked up a small stone and hit a trunk with it. It made a dull sound, which felt pointless. I kept going. After another 10 minutes, I saw the figure again. This time it was to my left, about 20 yards away, standing between two thick trunks. The hood was pulled low, and I saw no face. I shouted for it to come out, telling it I was just passing through. The figure did not respond. I stepped closer, pushing through low branches that scratched my jacket and arms, and felt leaves brushing my face. When I reached the spot, it was gone again. No footprints, no broken twigs, nothing. My heart pounded harder. I decided I would not go any farther. I turned around and started back. I wanted out. I wanted my car. I wanted to hear the engine and the tires on gravel. As I retraced my steps, I tried to follow my footprints. They were there, but fainter than before. The silence continued. I looked back several times, expecting to see the figure following me, but saw no one. However, I felt that stare. It made my shoulders tense. I rolled them to release the tension, but it did nothing. I walked fast. My legs ached and my lower back hurt from the tension. I checked my watch again. I had been out for maybe an hour and a half total. I should have been back at the car in less than that. I pushed on, watching for the curved trunks I saw earlier. They looked familiar. I recognized some mossy stones. I recognized a broken branch on the ground. Good. I was on the right path. As I moved closer to the trailhead, I noticed that the silence did not break. Not a single bird, not a single gust of wind. My ears felt odd, as if they were ringing. I tried to pop them by swallowing, and it helped a little. At some point I saw the figure one last time. It stood straight ahead, right in the middle of the trail. This time it was not hiding behind branches. I stopped about 30 yards away. The figure did not move. I could see that it was tall and wore a hooded garment that reached down below the waist. I shouted again, but it stayed silent. I felt my knees tremble. I raised my arms and said I was leaving. I said I didn't want any trouble. My voice sounded shaky. I took a step forward. The figure remained still. I took another step. Still no movement. I considered rushing it, but the silence made me hesitate. I moved slowly, one step at a time. When I got close enough to make out more details, I saw that the inside of the hood was completely dark. I held my breath and reached out with my hand, shaking to touch the figure. The moment my fingertips should have made contact, I felt nothing. My hand passed through empty air. The figure vanished as if it had never been there. I stumbled forward and almost fell on my face. I looked around. Nothing. Just the trail and trees. I stood there breathing hard, sweating. my heart pounding. I wiped my face with my sleeve. My entire body felt tense and sore. I turned and hurried toward the exit. I knew I didn't have much farther to go. I forced my legs to move faster, ignoring the pain in my knee and the ache in my shoulders. I just wanted to be out of there. When I finally reached the trailhead, I saw my car waiting exactly where I left it. I pressed the unlock button on the key fob and heard the chirp of the locks. That sound felt too loud after all that silence. I jumped in, slammed the door, started the engine, and pulled away. As I drove away, the forest grew smaller in my rearview mirror. I still heard no birds, no wind, no nothing. The silence remained behind me, locked in that place. My heart was still beating fast. My muscles still felt tight. I gripped the steering wheel and kept driving, not looking back again. I never expected to hear anything coming from the attic. I had been living in this semi-attached house for about 2 months. The other unit had been empty for as long as I'd known. The realtor told me there was no neighbor. The windows on that side were always dark and nobody ever came in or out. Late one night, I woke up because of a strange sound above my bedroom. It was a soft tapping at first, but it made no sense. There should have been silence. That night I stood there in the dark, looking up at my ceiling, trying to figure out what was making that noise. Within a few days, the noise became louder. It turned into scraping and shuffling. I decided to go up there and see for myself. I climbed the folding stairs to the attic, holding a small flashlight in my right hand and an old wooden baseball bat in my left. I don't know what I expect. Maybe a raccoon or some old pipes rattling in the wind. The air inside the attic is stale. I can smell dust and old wood. There are a few cardboard boxes scattered around, none with any writing on them. I see a small dresser pushed against the shared wall, the one that divides my home from the empty unit next door. The wall on that side looks old and rough, as if it hasn't been painted or cleaned in a long time. There is a thin layer of grime on the floor. I run the flashlight beam around. I see nothing unusual, just old boards, some insulation, a low ceiling with exposed beams, and this dresser. I approach it. The dresser is short and has 3 drawers. I try the first drawer. It slides open with a dry scratch. It's empty. The second drawer is the same. The third drawer is, well, no clues. Nothing inside. I notice something leaning against the dresser on the floor. A mirror. It's not large, maybe 2 feet wide, 3 feet tall, with a dark wooden frame covered in dust. I wipe it with my sleeve. The glass is cloudy. I lift the mirror and angle it toward the light. The reflection is not right. I see my flashlight beam. I see my own face, but behind me, I don't see the cardboard boxes. Instead, I see a bare attic room with no boxes, no dresser. It looks like a different attic. In the reflection, the beams look older, and the walls have cracks I can see behind me. My heart beats faster. I turn around and double-check. Behind me are the boxes and the dresser. I look back at the mirror. The scene is different again. I hold the mirror closer to my face and stare into it. My breathing is shallow, and my palms are sweaty around the flashlight handle. I think I see something move in the reflection. A shape. It looks like a person standing in that other attic. This person is far in the background, in a darker corner. He wears a black hat with a wide brim. He doesn't move much. He just stands there, watching. I can see his face. I feel my stomach tighten. I lower the mirror and look behind me again, shining the flashlight into every corner. Nothing. Nobody else is here. I raise the mirror again. The person in the reflection is still there. He's standing closer now. I take a step back. My boots scuff against the rough floor. The sound is dull and heavy. I feel a chill on my neck. I don't want to call the police. What would I say? I'm seeing a weird reflection in a dusty mirror. That's ridiculous. I decide to put the mirror back where I found it. I set it gently on the floor next to the dresser and leave the attic. I don't sleep well that night. I lie in bed, listening to every creak in my house. The tapping returns around 2 a.m., right above me. We pull the blanket higher, trying to ignore it. The noise grows louder, turning into scratching. I get up and turn on the lights. The noise stops. I stand there in my boxers, breathing through my mouth, feeling my heart thumping in my chest. I tell myself it's just the house settling, but I don't really believe that. The next morning, I open the door to the other unit. It's not locked. The real estate agent said no one owned it right now, but maybe they forgot to secure it. Inside, it's empty. No furniture, no carpets, just bare floors and white walls. I check every room. It's all vacant, with no sign of anyone. And even find the attic access panel. It's painted shut. There are no footprints on the floor. Nothing. I close the door and return to my side of the house. That afternoon, I decide to return to my attic with better lighting. I bring a work lamp with a long extension cord. When I get up there, I plug in the lamp and flood the space with a harsh yellow light. Now I can see every corner clearly. The boxes are still where I left them. The dresser is unchanged. The mirror is on the floor. I pick it up and look into it again. The reflection still shows a different attic, but now I can see more details. The boards and the reflection look rotten. The ceiling sags in places. There's no dresser, just empty space. The figure with the black hat is still there. He's standing closer than before. I can see the outline of his shoulders and something like a coat. I still can see his face. I say nothing. I breathe slowly. My skin feels cold. I lower the mirror and face the wall between the units. I tap on it with my knuckles. Solid. I push against it. It doesn't budge. I don't hear anything from the other side. I turn back to the mirror. The figure is gone. I feel relief, but then I hear something above me. The scraping sound. It's right above my head now. I shine my flashlight upward. I see a wooden beam. Dusty insulation. Nothing moves. The noise stops. I look back at the mirror. The figure is there again. This time he's so close I can almost make out a shape under the hat. I drop the mirror. The glass hits the wooden floor and wobbles but doesn't break. I back away. My breathing comes in quick, shallow bursts. I walk backward until I reach the attic stairs, and then I climb down as fast as I can, nearly losing my balance. For the next few days, I try to ignore the attic. I keep hearing noises at night. It's always at night. Scratching, then tapping, like nails dragging across a board. Sometimes I hear a muffled thump, like something hitting the wall. I try to put headphones on and watch TV. The noise gets louder when I ignore it. When I pause the TV and listen, it quiets down. It's like it's waiting for my attention. On the third night, I can't sleep. I stay awake in the living room, sitting on the couch, staring at the ceiling. My throat feels dry. My shoulders are tense. My legs are shaking. I keep thinking about that mirror. I don't know why I'm afraid. It's just a mirror. Maybe it's broken or warped. Maybe it's reflecting something else, like a trick of the light. But I know what I saw. That figure was there. I rub my hands together and bite the inside of my cheek. Around midnight, I hear it again. The sound from the attic. I stand up, grab my flashlight and bat, and go upstairs. The ladder creaks as I climb. My heart is pounding. My mouth is dry. I feel sweat on the back of my neck. The lamp is still up there, so I turn it on. I see everything just as before. The boxes, the dresser, the empty drawers, the mirror on the floor. I pick up the mirror and hold it tight. I lift it, face level, and stare into it. The figure is there right in front of me, as if standing just behind the glass. I can see his face. It's dark under that hat, but I feel his eyes on me. I feel a heavy sensation in my chest. I can't look away. I try to say something, but my throat is tight. I manage to whisper, "What do you want?" No answer. The figure doesn't move. I try to lower the mirror, but my arms feel weak. My hands are shaking. Suddenly the noise starts again. Scratching above me. Long, steady scratches. It sounds like claws on wood. I swallow hard. I try to lower the mirror. The figure moves closer in the reflection. I see him raise a hand. His hand is just a dark shape. I don't see fingers, just the outline of something reaching toward me. I gasp and set the mirror down again, leaning it against the dresser. The noise in the ceiling grows louder. Now it sounds like something scraping hard, trying to find a way through the boards. I step back and hit my head on a low beam. I curse under my breath, rubbing the spot. I grab the dresser drawers and yank them fully out. They're completely empty, not even dust inside, just smooth wooden surfaces. I shake them, look behind them. Nothing. I push the dresser aside. Behind it, the floorboards are loose. I kneel and pry one up. It comes off easily. Underneath is just insulation and a few spider webs. I see no tunnels, no hidden compartments. I push the dresser back and look around. I walk to the wall that divides the two units. I press my ear against it. I knock a few times. The noise in the ceiling quiets. I stand still, breathing through my nose, listening. Suddenly, there's a bang on the other side of the wall. I jump back and nearly drop the flashlight. My heart is racing so hard I can feel it in my throat. There's nothing there. I know that side is empty. It's just vacant rooms and empty floors. I take a deep breath and return to the mirror. I grab it by the frame and face it toward the dividing wall instead of myself. I see the reflection of that other attic again. Now it looks darker. The figure is gone. I see only the empty space, cracked boards, weak light. I slowly angle the mirror back toward me. The figure appears again, closer than before, as if he's leaning right into the glass. My hands tremble. Sweat drips down my back. I try to set the mirror down. As I do, I whisper, "Stop." I don't know why. I just say it. The noise above returns, sharper this time. It sounds like something dragging a hard metal edge across the wood. The sound makes my teeth clench. A headache forms behind my eyes. I position myself under the spot where I hear the sound and tap on the ceiling with the baseball bat. "Stop." I say it louder this time. The noise pauses, then resumes even louder. The entire attic feels hostile now. I just want to get out. I grab the mirror and tuck it under my arm. I turn off the lamp and head down the ladder with it. The mirror's frame presses into my ribs as I climb down. In my bedroom, I lean it against the wall and stare at it under normal light. I see myself behind me in my normal bedroom. No strange attic, no figure, just me and my furniture. I exhale and laugh a bit, feeling relief. Then, late that night, I hear it again, the scratching. The roof above my bedroom, it's worse than before. I jump up and stand in the dark, listening. The sound is almost frantic. I switch on the light. The noise lowers in intensity, but doesn't stop completely. It's like something is trapped and wants out. I feel panic building in my chest. I rush to the attic again, this time leaving the mirror downstairs. I climb up quickly, shining the flashlight everywhere. Empty. No changes. I yell at the ceiling. "Leave me alone." My voice echoes slightly. The noise stops for a moment, then starts again, softer but steady. I go back down and grab the mirror. I bring it up again. I want to see if the figure is still there. I shine the flashlight on the mirror and lift it. The reflection shows the other attic. The figure stands in the center holding something. I can tell what it is. It looks like a long, narrow object. He raises it slowly. A knot forms in my stomach. I try to ignore him. I look away from the mirror and stare at the wooden floor. The scratching sound intensifies. I look back. He's closer. I shake my head and lower the mirror, pressing it against my chest. The sound calms down slightly. I realize that every time I pay attention to him, the noise changes. When I try to ignore him, it gets worse. When I face him, it stabilizes. I don't want to keep looking at him, but I have no choice. I lift the mirror again. He stands there motionless, black hat tilted forward. I speak quietly, my voice shaking. "I see you." The noise slows down. I say it again. "I see you." The scratching becomes a faint tap. My legs feel weak, but I keep standing. I hold the mirror and breathe slowly. My hands hurt from gripping the frame. I feel a draft from somewhere. The attic door behind me is open. I can smell the dust and wood. The figure and reflection don't move. I stand there for a long time just looking at him, waiting for something to happen. Finally, I lower the mirror and place it face down on the attic floor. I hear a muffled scrape above. I pick up the mirror, hold it towards the attic's far corner. The reflection still shows that other place. The figure is gone. I listen. Silence. I stand there for at least 5 minutes, my heart pounding, my face hot. I put the mirror into a large cardboard box. I close the box and push it to the corner of the attic. I go downstairs. That night, I sleep with the television on. I don't hear any scratching or tapping, just the muffled noise of some late-night talk show. In the morning, I open the attic and peek inside. It's quiet. The boxes are there, the dresser is there, and the sealed box with the mirror inside is there. The ceiling looks normal. I close the attic and lock it with a small latch I installed on the inside frame. That night, no sounds come from above. I stay in that house for a few more weeks. Sometimes I hear a faint tapping, but when I go to check, nothing is there. I never open the mirror's box again. I leave it there, buried under old junk, hoping that I never see that figure again. I keep my house lit at night, I keep the TV on. Some music plays. The silence makes my ears ring. Whenever I think I hear something, I stop and listen carefully. Usually, it's nothing. Sometimes it's a soft scrape, but it fades if I turn on the attic light and say, "I see you." After that, nothing happens. I guess he stays on his side. I don't know who he is or why that mirror shows that place. I don't know what would happen if I smashed it, and I don't want to find out. I'm not looking for explanations. I just want to live here without that noise, without that feeling that someone is watching. For now, it's quiet enough. I can handle that. I should have paid more attention to that old wardrobe before I bought it. I noticed something off about the mirror inside from the start, but I thought it was just old glass and a bit of wear. Now, a few weeks later, I wish I had never set eyes on it. Every time I open those doors, I see something wrong with the reflection. It never matches my face. It moves on its own. It's always showing details I can't explain. It's like it's watching me, waiting for me to do something. I'm not making this up. I'm going to tell you everything, and I swear I'm not exaggerating. I just don't know what else to do. I first saw the wardrobe at a local antique shop. The place smelled like dust and old paper. The owner barely spoke, with the habit of tapping his fingers on the counter. I walked in because I needed a place to store my clothes. I live alone in a small house with creaky floors and thin walls, and my bedroom closet doesn't hold much. The wardrobe was taller than me. Carved wood, heavy doors, and a mirror inside, attached to the interior surface of one door. The price was lower than I expected, so I bought it. I hired a couple of guys to deliver it. No kids around, no neighbors helping, just a quiet afternoon. I put it in my bedroom, right across from my bed, so I could see it when I woke up. It seemed like a nice, solid piece of old furniture. Nothing more. The first time I noticed something strange was the day after I got it. I opened the doors to hang some jackets. The mirror was there, of course, but I remember looking at it and feeling confused. My face looked wrong. It's hard to explain without sounding dramatic, but my mouth seemed curved up even though I wasn't smiling. My actual face was neutral. I touched my lips and they were in a straight line, but in the mirror, I saw a slight grin. It was small, but it was there. I closed the doors and walked away, thinking it was a trick of the light. That night before I went to sleep, I looked again. I turned on the lamp beside my bed and opened the wardrobe doors. I wanted to check that mirror. This time, my reflection's eyes seemed a little off. They were looking slightly to the left, even though I was looking straight at the mirror. I moved my head side to side, but the reflection didn't match perfectly. The differences were small, but I could see them. I felt a tightness in my chest. I shut the doors hard, got under the covers, and tried to ignore it. Over the next few days, the strange differences got worse. One morning, I opened the doors and saw that the reflection was wearing something else. I was standing in front of the mirror in my pajamas, but my reflection had a shirt and vest. Something old-fashioned. It wasn't me. I could see the details clearly. Old-style buttons, a stiff collar, a dark, worn-out vest. I jumped back and slammed the wardrobe shut. My breath came fast. I backed away until my legs hit the bed frame. I waited a minute, then opened the doors again. This time I just saw my normal clothes, but the reflection still had that odd timing. My eyes or mouth would be off by a fraction of a second. I tried rubbing the mirror with a dry cloth. I tried cleaning it with glass cleaner. It made no difference. The glass was smooth and clear. When I stood there, I felt uneasy. My stomach churned. I couldn't understand why this was happening. I kept telling myself it must be some trick of old glass, some defect, but it didn't feel that way. A few nights later, I saw something new. It wasn't just my reflection wearing old clothes. Instead of showing my bedroom behind me, I saw a different room, a bedroom from a long time ago. I saw a bed with a high wooden headboard, a table with a candle, a chest in the corner. The lighting was dim, like a weak oil lamp. I reached behind me to feel my own room. I could feel my bed, my sheets, my lamp. But in the mirror, I saw something else entirely. It didn't even match the shape of my room. The corners were off. The walls were different. The floor looked like old wood planks. I could see the grain in the worn spots. I closed the wardrobe and leaned against it. My heart pounded. My hands felt cold. There was no sound except my breathing. I stood there for a few minutes, staring at the closed doors, not sure what to do. I decided to try something. I waited until late at night, turned off all lights except one small one across the room, and opened the doors again. The mirror showed that old room more clearly now. The furniture inside the reflection looked like it belonged to another era. I reached out to touch the glass. It felt solid. But when I leaned closer, I noticed that inside the reflection there was movement. I could see someone moving in that other room. A man dressed in old clothes, pacing near the bed. He moved slowly and didn't look at me. He seemed busy doing something, looking at papers on a table. I wanted to call out, but I felt stupid. Instead, I just stood there watching him. After a minute or so, the man in the reflection turned toward me. He didn't match my movements. He just faced the mirror and stared. I could see his face. Short hair, a mustache, and a narrow face. He was not me. He looked older than me. He had a serious expression. Then he took a step forward. I felt my gut tighten. I stepped back, stumbling a little. He kept coming closer until his face filled the mirror. His eyes looked sharp. They seemed to focus on my eyes. I slammed the doors shut again and locked them with the small key that came with the wardrobe. My hand shook as I turned that tiny key. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept hearing soft creaks from the wardrobe. Every time I tried to ignore it, I heard another faint sound. Around 3 in the morning, I got up, turned on the lights, and tried to open the doors. They were stuck. I had locked them, yes, but now even the key wouldn't turn right away. I pushed and pulled until the lock clicked. When I opened the doors, I saw only my face in the mirror, but my expression didn't match again. I looked terrified, but the reflection looked calm. I slammed it shut and decided not to open it again until morning. The next day, I tried to move the wardrobe out of my bedroom. I wanted it gone. I tried sliding it, but it was too heavy. The floor creaked, and I almost lost my grip. I decided to empty it first. I took out all my clothes. As soon as I cleared it, I tried again. Still too heavy. I considered calling someone to help, but I didn't want to explain why I needed it gone right now.
I felt stupid, scared of a piece of furniture, but I couldn't help it.
That evening, I heard tapping sounds coming from inside the wardrobe. Soft taps, like fingers on wood. I stood there a few feet away listening. My throat felt dry. I called out, "Who's there?" Like an idiot. No answer. Just more tapping. I grabbed a flashlight and opened the doors wide. The mirror showed the old room again. The man was back, closer this time. He stood right in front of the mirror facing me. He reached out with his right hand. I saw it press against the glass from inside. I could see the details of his skin, the wrinkles in his knuckles. I felt a cold sweat on my forehead. I moved the flashlight beam across the mirror, but it didn't change what I saw. I tried to push the mirror from my side, but it felt solid. The man's hand pressed harder. I could see the glass bulge a little. I gasped and stepped back. I wanted to run, but my legs felt weak. Instead, I closed the doors again and locked them. I pulled a chair over and wedged it under the door handles. I stood there breathing hard, feeling the sweat under my arms. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to sleep in that room, but I had nowhere else to go. I ended up sleeping on the couch in the living room, leaving all the lights on. In the morning, I checked again. The wardrobe stood quietly. I touched the doors. They felt normal. I unlocked them and opened them slowly. The mirror showed me my face, and this time it looked just like me, perfectly matched. I waved my hand, and the reflection did the same at the same moment. I tried to smile, and it smiled back. I sighed, relieved, and stood there for a moment. Maybe it was all in my head. I left the house to get some fresh air. I bought a coffee and came back after an hour. I decided to try something else. I got a screwdriver and tried to remove the mirror from the door. Maybe if I got rid of it, the problem would stop. The screws were old and rusted. I managed to remove 2 of them. When I got to the third, it wouldn't budge. I leaned into it, pressing hard. The screwdriver slipped and I scraped my knuckle.
I hissed and pulled my hand back.
A tiny drop of blood landed on the mirror's edge. I wiped it away. When I looked at the mirror again, I saw that old room. The man was there, and this time he was smiling, not me. He reached out again and tapped on his side of the glass. I heard the sound clearly. It wasn't my imagination. His knuckles tapped on the mirror from the inside.
I jumped back and nearly dropped the screwdriver.
He pressed both palms against the glass. I could see him pushing, and the mirror bent outward slightly. My heart hammered. I tried to push it back, but it was solid. My fingers touched hard glass, but I felt a slight give. I felt like something in the mirror was softer, like a thin layer of ice about to crack. I panicked. I grabbed the wardrobe doors and slammed them shut. I shoved the chair back under the handles and stepped away. I decided to call someone. I tried looking up the antique shop's number, but it was disconnected. I tried searching online for information about antique Victorian wardrobes with strange mirrors. I found nothing helpful. I considered calling a friend, but what would I say? I ended up pacing my living room, looking at my phone, feeling trapped. I couldn't leave that thing in my bedroom. I needed to do something. I thought about breaking the mirror. I didn't want to smash glass in my house, but I didn't see another way. That night, I couldn't sleep. I heard scraping sounds coming from the bedroom. I heard soft groans like wood under pressure. I grabbed a hammer from my toolbox and walked to the bedroom door. I stood outside listening. The scraping stopped. I opened the door, reached in and flipped the light switch. The wardrobe stood there, silent. Its doors were closed. I held the hammer tightly. My palms were sweaty. I walked up to it and listened. Nothing. Slowly, I took a chair away and unlocked the doors. Inside, the mirror showed that other room again. The man was very close. I could see his breath on the glass. I could see a thin layer of fog where he was breathing. He leaned in and tilted his head, looking directly. I felt my stomach turn. I raised the hammer. I said, "Stop," even though I knew he couldn't hear me. He grinned. Then he lifted his hand and placed it flat on the glass. I leaned forward, holding the hammer, and tapped the glass with it. The sound was dull. I pulled back and swung the hammer. Not too hard, just enough to test. The glass shook, but didn't crack. He seemed amused. He pulled back from the glass, and I saw his arms move as if he were adjusting his sleeves. Then he leaned forward again, pushing on the mirror. I saw the mirror bulge out. I swung the hammer harder. The glass vibrated under the hit, and for a moment I saw a thin crack appear.
He frowned.
I hit it again, harder this time. The crack spread. I heard him tap from the inside, harder and faster, like he was panicking. I didn't care. I wanted him gone. I slammed the hammer into the mirror, over and over, until it shattered. Pieces of old glass fell into the wardrobe. Some shards hit the floor, and I jumped back to avoid cutting my feet. I could see through the empty frame now. Behind where the mirror had been, I found nothing but wood backing. No strange room. No old man. Just splintered wood. Dust from behind the old mirror floated in the air. My hands shook from the effort. My breathing was loud in my ears. I stepped forward and looked closely. There was no hidden compartment. No trick door. Nothing. I pulled away and dropped the hammer. Then I closed the wardrobe doors and leaned on them. My head felt light. My chest hurt from breathing so fast. I spent the rest of the night cleaning up the broken glass. I wrapped the shards in thick paper, then in a plastic bag. I checked the inside of the wardrobe again to make sure I hadn't missed anything. It was just wood, old wood with a few holes where the screws had been. I ran my hand along it. It felt solid and ordinary. I took a deep breath and stepped back. I moved the wardrobe out of my bedroom the next morning, piece by piece, removing the doors first, then the shelves, making it lighter. Without the mirror, it felt like any other old piece of furniture. I pushed it into my spare room and left it there. I didn't want it near my bed anymore. I have no explanation for what I saw. I know what I remember. The mirror didn't reflect me correctly. It showed that old room in that strange man. It showed him moving closer, pushing against the glass. Now, with the mirror gone, I don't see anything strange in that wardrobe. It's quiet. It's just an antique cabinet for clothes. But I am still uneasy. Sometimes I feel a draft in the house at night, and sometimes I hear a soft tap, tap, tap. But when I check, there's nothing there. I guess I'll keep the wardrobe for now. I'm not sure what else to do with it. I don't see anything unusual anymore, and I'd rather not explain it to anyone who might want to buy it. If I ever decide to sell it, I'll do it without the mirror. I don't want anyone else to go through what I did. For now, I'll try to forget it and move on. I don't know what happened. All I know is that I'm done looking into strange mirrors, and I'm done trying to understand old furniture. I just want peace. I arrived in the village in the early afternoon. I was on foot, and my shoes were dusty. The place was quiet. I saw old stone walls, small houses with wooden doors and narrow windows. There were no cars parked anywhere. I did not see modern signs, no streetlights, no electric lines overhead. I remember feeling uncertain about why I had even come this way. I had left the main road about an hour before, thinking this could be a shortcut. Now I stood in front of a worn-out archway leading into the village center. The silence and stillness bothered me. I tried to ignore it and kept walking. I noticed something strange almost immediately. The afternoon sun fell at a low angle, and I saw my shadow on the ground. But my shadow looked slightly off. My head and shoulders were correct, but my legs were too long. I adjusted my stance and looked again. The shape on the ground twitched as if it were alive. I stepped back. A tense knot formed in my stomach. I looked at a stone bench nearby. The bench had a shadow on the wall behind it, but the shape did not match the bench. The bench was straight and simple, but its shadow curved along the wall as if sliding around a corner. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and looked again. The shadow continued to shift, moving a few inches every time I looked away. I felt sweat forming on my forehead. I walked deeper into the village, moving slowly. The stone pavement under my boots was uneven. The buildings had chipped paint and old wooden signs that I could not read well. I tried to find someone to talk to. I heard a quiet rustle behind me. I turned around and saw nothing, but I noticed the shadows on the wall again. Two tall shadows against a whitewashed wall did not match any visible objects. They looked like outlines of people, but no one stood there. I saw one of these shadows tilt slightly, as if bending around a drain pipe. I felt my pulse quicken. My mouth was dry. I wanted to leave, so I turned around and retraced my steps toward the archway. I walked for at least 5 minutes, but I could not see the archway. The path seemed longer now. I kept going, expecting to see the entrance. I took long strides, looking straight ahead. I saw nothing but more stone walls and more old doors. I recognized the broken water trough. I was sure I had passed it before. I pushed forward, but the road stretched without end. I looked up at the sky. The sun had not moved much, but I felt as if I had been walking a lot longer than a few minutes. I tried another route. I turned left at a corner and followed a narrow alley. It led me back to the same small square with the same stone bench. I was trapped. I stood still and checked my surroundings carefully. The air felt heavy. I heard a faint scraping sound. I looked down and saw a shadow moving along the cobblestones. It looked like a long, thin shape sliding slowly. There was no object that could cast it. It moved behind me, then across the street. I approached it, reached out my hand, and stopped. My heart was pounding. The shadow slipped under a wooden door and disappeared. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down. I decided to try talking to someone. I saw a figure near a corner. It was a man wearing a dusty gray jacket. He was looking at something on the wall. I approached him and spoke calmly, saying hello and asking where I was. He turned to me, his face pale, looking uneasy and backing away. His eyes darted from me to the ground. His shadow on the wall next to him twitched in a strange way that looked like it was trying to slip off the wall. I stepped closer and asked him how to leave this place, but he didn't answer, just shaking his head and stepping away. He moved quickly around the corner and vanished. I followed, but he was gone. I saw no one else. I tried another street. On the ground, I saw dark shapes crawling over the stones, forming letters that at first I couldn't read. The letters twisted and broke apart. I crouched down and watched closely as the shadows rearranged themselves, forming words that made no sense. Tress, Ren, SLA. Then they scattered. I wiped my forehead, tasting salt on my lips, and felt a slight tremble in my hands. I was afraid and didn't know what to do. I wanted to leave, but the exit was gone. I tried to remain calm and think step by step. I walked around the village, checking doors. Many were locked. I found an old inn with a wooden door that creaked open. Inside, the air was stale. There were tables and chairs, but no one was there. I saw dusty lanterns and empty shelves. The floorboards squeaked under my boots. I noticed the shadows again. On the far wall, the shadows of the tables and chairs formed strange shapes. The chair shadows moved even though I wasn't moving. I stepped closer. They spelled out something for a moment. Step. Then the shadows changed shape and stretched upward. I backed away. I felt my heart race. I left the inn, stepping outside again. I tried to call out. I shouted for help. My voice echoed. I heard a whisper behind me. The whisper sounded like my own name, said by more than one voice at once. I spun around. No one stood there, but the shadows on the wall across the street flickered. I saw them lean forward as if listening to me. I shouted again, asking what they wanted. The only answer I got was a soft rustling noise. I could smell old wood and damp stone. My scalp was tight, and I clenched my fists. I continued down a narrow path between two low buildings. The sunlight was fading. I wasn't sure if time was passing normally. I reached a small courtyard with a dry fountain in the center. Around it, shadows danced without any source. They slid across the ground, then climbed the walls. They formed words that I could almost read. I stared and waited. The words took shape slowly. They said, "Tell her." I said I didn't understand. I waited. The shadows shifted again. Now they formed my name, Jack. I stepped back, startled. I had never told anyone here my name. I felt a chill in my chest. My breathing became shallow. I said my name out loud. The shadows flickered. They spread out in different directions, then gathered again. They formed new words. Look inside. I turned around and saw a heavy wooden door in the corner of the courtyard. It had no handle, but I pressed on it. It opened inward. Inside, there was a small room with a stone floor and no furniture. On the floor, I saw a pattern of light and dark shapes. I didn't see a lantern or candle. The pattern changed as I stepped in. The shadows formed a sentence on the ground. "Acknowledge us." I swallowed hard. I said I saw them and knew they were here. I said I understood they were communicating. The shapes broke apart and reformed again. Now they showed an arrow pointing outside. I followed the arrow and stepped back into the courtyard. The shadow circled around the fountain, then stretched out toward a doorway on the other side. I followed it to a low building with cracked plaster on the walls. I pushed the door. It creaked. Inside, the floor was covered in dirt. I saw a lantern hanging from a beam, and I tried to light it with my lighter. The flame flickered and caught. The inside of the room smelled like old earth. The shadows here were calmer, staying on the walls. They spelled out a new phrase. "Say it out loud." I asked what they wanted me to say. The shadows moved, forming the word understand. I repeated the word understand. Then I waited. The shadows separated into thin strips and crawled out the door. I followed them outside. I noticed that the path looked different now. The street seemed shorter, and I thought I could see the archway at the far end. I hurried toward it, but after a few steps, I felt a tug at my shirt. I turned and saw my own shadow stretching away from me. It pulled back as if resisting my movement. I felt my heart pounding. I tried to move forward again, but my own shadow blocked my way. It grew wider, darker, and made me hesitate. I asked what else they wanted. The shadow on the ground near my feet changed shape. It formed the words accept. I said I accepted them. I said I accepted that they existed in this place. The shadow loosened its grip. I felt relief in my chest. I walked forward again. I saw the archway more clearly now. The stones were the same as before, but I could tell the path was no longer stretching. I hurried toward it. My boots scraped the ground. The air felt lighter, but I was not free yet. At the edge of the archway, I saw a cluster of shadows stacked on top of each other. They formed a sentence across the ground. "Say what you know." I spoke out loud. I said I knew they were here. I said I knew they could move and form words. I said I knew they had kept me from leaving because they wanted me to acknowledge them and understand them. I said I understood that they had been trying to show me something. I said I understood their message. The shadows thinned out, spreading over the walls and street, no longer forming letters. I stepped through the archway. At first I was not sure if I would be allowed to leave. I walked a few steps away from the village. I looked back. The buildings were still there, quiet and old. The sunlight fell at a different angle now. I checked my shadow on the ground. It matched my body perfectly. My legs were the right length. My shoulders aligned correctly, and it stayed in place. I breathed out slowly. My muscles felt tense but calmer now. I took a few more steps down the road. This time, the path did not extend. I reached the spot where I had first turned off. The main road was there, dusty and empty. I looked back at the village. From where I stood, it looked ordinary. I couldn't see any strange shadows anymore. The silence and stillness remained, but now they felt less threatening. I wiped sweat from my forehead. My shirt stuck to my back. I turned away and continued on my original route. The road was as it should be, just a normal dirt path leading forward. I walked at a steady pace. I felt tired, but relieved. I listened to my footsteps and the sound of the breeze. I checked my shadow again. It stayed normal on the ground. No strange movements. No crawling letters. I didn't hear any whispering voices. I kept going until the village was out of sight. As I moved farther away, I didn't encounter any other strange sights. The late afternoon sun lowered in the sky like any normal day. I felt hungry and thirsty, but that seemed normal. I touched my face and felt the sweat drying. My throat was scratchy, and I swallowed. I looked around for a place to rest. I found a flat rock and sat down. I took a few breaths. Everything felt solid and clear. I thought about what had happened back there. The shadows had asked me to acknowledge them and understand them. I had done that. After that, they let me go. I felt the tension leaving my shoulders. My back relaxed. I stood up and continued walking. The road led onward. I had no trouble recognizing landmarks. I saw a small grove of trees ahead and a normal wooden sign showing a route number. It felt reassuring. I reached into my pocket and realized my lighter was still there. I felt its shape against my fingers. I remembered using it inside that building to light the lantern. I remembered the strange words spelled by shadows. I remembered saying, "Understand and accept." The memory still made me feel uneasy, but it no longer filled me with panic. I was free now. I headed forward, focusing on the present step after step, leaving that odd place behind. I never saw anyone else on that road. I never heard any more whispers. My shadow remained ordinary. After a while, the sun began to set and I considered where to camp. But as I looked around at the dry grass and dusty trees, I realized I would probably sleep fine here. Nothing seemed threatening anymore. I could lie down, rest, and continue in the morning. I knew I would remember the village. I could still see in my mind the twisting shapes of those shadows. I could still feel the dryness in my mouth, the pressure on my chest, the way my heart pounded. But now I was outside. Nothing held me back. The path didn't stretch anymore. The shadows had given me my freedom as soon as I acknowledged what they wanted me to see. That was enough. I moved on. I was just trying to get home. It was late, past midnight, and the street in front of me had no lights at all. The air smelled like dirt and old leaves, and I could barely see my own shoes. I felt tired, sore in my shoulders and knees, and I only wanted to reach my apartment and drop into bed. But right then I noticed something off. The road led me forward into complete darkness, and when I reached the end, heavy rain began, sudden and pounding. I saw a house on my left, unlit, with windows hidden behind thick curtains, and the front door half open. I stood there staring at the dark shape of this place, and something about it didn't feel right. But the rain was cold, and I had no umbrella or coat. I told myself I would only wait inside for a few minutes, until the rain slowed down. I took out my phone and turned on its flashlight. The battery was low, but I thought it would last long enough for me to stand inside and get a sense of the place. That was my first mistake. I stepped inside, holding my phone up so I could see the floor in front of me. The interior was so dark that my small light barely helped. My shoes scraped against something like dry dirt or old splinters. The smell inside was strange. I smelled candle wax, like a melted candle might still be around, and something else that reminded me of sweat. Not fresh sweat, but the kind that clings to old clothes that haven't been washed in weeks. The air is stale and heavy. It makes me breathe shallow and slow. I close the door behind me, but it doesn't shut all the way. The rain outside is so loud I can hear it hitting the ground, and there's a slight draft that slips through the doorway. The place is silent except for the rain. I stand still for a few seconds. My heart beats a bit faster, because I am somewhere I should not be. I know it. I feel my pulse in my neck, but I tell myself it's just a house. Maybe abandoned, maybe someone left it open, maybe a homeless guy is squatting inside. I try to relax. I look around. My phone light flickers over the walls. The wallpaper looks old, and maybe peeling in places. I see a corridor leading deeper into the house, and to my right, there's a space that might be a living room. Everything is dark and silent inside. I don't see furniture, at least not big chairs or tables. I step forward, and my foot bumps into something hard and wooden. I angle the phone down. It's a small stool turned upside down. The legs stick up at odd angles, and there's a melted candle on the floor beside it. The wax has formed a puddle hardened into a thick lump. I feel uneasy. I don't want to spend more time here than I have to, but I don't want to go back outside. The rain is relentless. and I'm already getting damp from the moisture in the air. I move forward slowly, careful not to trip. As I pass along the hallway, I notice something on the wall. My phone's light shows me a mural painted on what seems like old wallpaper. There are human figures, but their faces are missing any features. Where eyes should be, there are just empty holes. Where mouths should be, there's nothing. Just blank ovals. They stand in groups, their arms at their sides, their bodies tall and thin. I feel my stomach tighten. Who would paint something like that? The silence breaks when I hear a slow sound above me. It's like someone is dragging their feet across a wooden floor. The noise is faint but steady. Along with it, I pick up something else. A muffled voice humming, or singing a tune I cannot understand. The sound is low and quiet, like someone with their mouth pressed against cloth. I stand still, holding my breath. My chest feels tight. I don't want to call out. I don't know who's up there. I'm in a strange house at night, and I don't like this situation at all. I decide to check if I can leave. I turn around and walk back to the door. I push it, but it feels stuck. I had closed it without pulling it tight, but now it won't open. The handle turns, but the door won't budge. I press my shoulder against it, but it's like something is holding it closed from the outside. I consider throwing my weight into it, but I worry it will make a lot of noise. I don't want to draw attention. I feel sweat forming on my forehead and under my arms. I grip my phone tighter and turn back to look into the dark house. The sound upstairs continues, the slow dragging, the muffled humming. My heart beats faster now. The corridor leads me to a small staircase that goes up. Before I head that way, I try to find another exit. I open a door to my left. It's a small room, maybe a storage room. It smells musty and I see shelves with empty jars, old cloth and some boxes. The walls in here are closer than they should be. I try the window. There is a window behind a heavy curtain. I try to move the curtain, but it's stiff and heavy. The window behind it appears to be blocked by something that feels like boards nailed across. I hear a slight creak as I press. I step back, breathing a bit harder. No way out here. I return to the corridor. The walls feel strange now. When I first came in, I felt like I had enough space. Now it feels like the walls have shifted closer, and I have to turn sideways to move forward. The wallpaper scrapes against the fabric of my jacket. I can't explain it, but the space feels tighter. I think about trying another room, so I check a door on the right. It's also stuck. I put my shoulder into it, and it doesn't move. I run my hand along the wall, feeling small bumps and uneven surfaces. The house seems to change as I move through it. The air is cooler, and the smell of wax is stronger. My nose wrinkles at the odor. I step back into the main corridor and look up at the staircase. I point my phone upstairs. The beam of light is weak. My battery is running low. I see the wooden steps, old and chipped. They creak softly when I press my foot on the first step. As I climb, I feel tension in my legs. I hold the railing, which feels a bit wet or oily. I don't know what it is, maybe moisture from the damp air, maybe something else. I reach the top, and there's a small landing area. I see 3 doors here. They're all closed. The humming and dragging sound is louder. It comes from behind the door at the end of the landing. The door on my left is locked. I try it quietly, just a gentle push, but it doesn't move. The door on my right opens into a narrow room. Inside, it's almost empty. The floorboards creak as I step inside. I sweep my phone light around. The walls here have more of those human figures without faces. This time some of them have their arms raised. The paint is rough. Someone used their fingers instead of a brush. I feel a twisting in my stomach. I just want to leave. I see a small closet in the room and approach it, thinking maybe there's something I can use. Maybe something to break a window. I open it. Inside, there's a candle on a small plate and a box of matches. The candle is half burned. The smell of wax is stronger here. I pick up the candle and matches. I want some light that's not dependent on my phone's battery. My hands shake as I strike a match and light the candle. The flame is weak, flickering against the darkness. I can see better now, at least a little. The candlelight shows me that the room is empty except for the closet and walls with those painted figures. I return to the landing. The candlelight throws long shadows over the wooden boards. I hear voices now, not just humming but whispers, high-pitched and delicate voices, saying my name. They say it quietly, like they're right behind me. But when I turn, there's no one. I feel a chill on my arms and neck. My scalp tightens. I hold the candle in one hand, my phone in the other. I try to think clearly. If I break something, maybe I can get out. But what to break, and how? Every window I've seen is blocked. I approach the door at the end of the landing. The humming and dragging come from inside. My heart pounds. I tell myself I'll just look. Maybe it's an old person who needs help. Maybe it's someone hurt. I put my ear against the door. The humming stops. The dragging stops. I hold my breath. I slowly push the door open. It opens a crack. The room beyond is larger. I see a table in the center. The curtains here are closed as well. The smell of sweat is very strong. I see another candle on the table, half melted but not lit. On the walls, there's another mural. This one is bigger, and the figures are closer. Their eyeless faces are turned toward the center of the room. I step inside, holding my candle up. The floor creaks loudly. My heart jumps in my throat. I look around. No one is here. The room is empty, but I could have sworn I heard someone. I walk around the table. On it there's a piece of cloth folded several times. I lift it carefully. Beneath it, there is a set of small tools like chisels or carving knives. They look old and used. The blades are worn down. I don't know what they're for. I put the cloth back down. I realize I'm breathing hard. I try to calm down, but I hear something behind me. It's the whispering again. They say my name. I turn around fast, holding the candle out. I see the door closing by itself. I run to it. I pull the handle, but it won't open. I curse under my breath. I shove against it. It does not move. I try kicking it, but the sound is hollow and doesn't help. I step back, panicking. I shine my phone around, looking for another way out. I see a second door on the far side of the room, hidden behind a drape. I push the drape aside and see the door. I test it. It opens. A narrow staircase goes up again. Another floor.
I don't want to go up again.
I'm already trapped, but I can stay here.
I head up. The candle flickers, and wax drips onto my fingers. It burns a little, making me wince. The stairs are even tighter. I have to hunch my shoulders. My knees knock against the steps. I feel the wood pressing in on me. The whispering follows me, soft and careful, repeating my name, elongating the vowels. I swallow hard. My throat is dry. At the top of these stairs, there's a small hallway with a single door. No decorations or murals here. The walls are plain but dirty. I smell something sour. I step forward. The candlelight shows scratches on the door's surface like someone scraped it with their nails. I try the handle. It turns, and I open it slowly. Inside, I find what looks like an attic room. The ceiling is angled, and the space is cramped. The only light comes from my candle. My phone is almost dead. The battery icon is flashing. I turn off the phone's flashlight to save what's left and rely on the candle. I see shadows along the floor. There's a mattress in one corner, old and stained. A small wooden box sits beside it. I walk to the box, each step making my legs shake. I open the box. Inside, I find a key and a folded piece of paper. I hold the candle over it and read what's written. It's just a list of names. I see my name on it. I step back, breathing hard. My name is right there with others I don't recognize. I drop the paper and pick up the key. I hold it tight in my hand. Maybe this key opens one of the blocked doors downstairs. I turn around to leave. The door is closed again. I didn't hear it shut. I approach it, the candle flickering, making my vision jump. I try the handle. It opens this time. I step out into the narrow staircase, and as I do, I hear the dragging sound again behind me inside the attic. I don't look back. I hurry down the steps, my hand sliding along the wood for support. Back in the larger room with the table, I see that the door I came through originally is now open. I point my candle toward it. The corridor beyond looks different. The walls are even closer, and the floorboards bulge upward, making the path uneven. I step carefully. The whispering continues, calling my name, but I pretend not to hear it. I move slowly, head down, focusing on the ground so I don't trip. The smell of sweat and wax follows me. I reach the top of the first staircase I climbed. I try to go back down to the first floor. The steps are no longer there. I hold the candle out. I see no stairs. Instead, I see a wall. I touch it. It's solid. The house has changed. I feel my heart pounding in my chest. I try the other doors on this level again. One of them is unlocked now. I use the key I found. It fits the lock clicks. I open the door. Inside, there is a cramped room with a single window. The window has boards, but they look loose. I set the candle down on the floor and press on the boards. They move a bit. I kick one hard. It cracks. The whispering grows louder outside the room, but I focus on the boards. I push again, harder, using my shoulder. The board snaps, letting in a rush of cold, wet air. Rain splashes my face. I see outside. The rain is still heavy, and it's dark, but I see a bit of the street. I lean into the gap, breaking more boards with my elbows. My ribs hurt. I pull pieces of wood away until I can squeeze through. The opening is narrow, but I manage to get my shoulders through. I feel splinters scratching my arms. I pull my torso out, then my legs. I land hard on my side outside in the mud. The rain soaks me immediately. I look back at the window. It's just a dark shape. I don't see anyone there. I stand up, knees shaking, breathing hard. My clothes stick to my skin. I see the street a few feet away. The lighting is still poor, but at least I'm outside. I don't hear the whispers anymore. I walk away from the house. My arms ache. My throat is raw. I keep going until I reach a corner with a dim streetlight. I stop there, catching my breath and looking back once. The house is barely visible in the darkness and rain. I don't try to explain it. I don't go back. I just keep walking until I find a main road. I don't call the police or anyone else. I just want to get home, lock my door, and never think about that place again. I don't know what I saw in there, or why my name was on that paper. I feel weak, cold, and sick, but I'm out. That's enough. I walk the rest of the way home, checking over my shoulder every few steps, listening to the rain, making sure I don't hear anyone whispering my name anymore. I pushed open the old wooden door at the back of the abandoned church and stepped inside. My flashlight caught dust drifting in the stale air. The smell reminded me of old cellar rooms where nothing moves for months. I had come here because people talked about noises under the floor, about strange lights flickering through cracks in the ground, and about voices that nobody could trace. I did not believe in any of it. I just wanted to see the truth. I wanted to know if there was something real down there, not in any abstract sense, but in the most direct way. I had to crawl around, check the stones, and push through dirt if needed. I was prepared to do that. Nothing fancy, just facts. I walked through the old church hall. It had no benches, no altar, nothing except broken pieces of wood and stone. There was a heavy silence. My own breathing sounded too loud. I kept my flashlight aimed at the floor, searching for the old trapdoor that some people mentioned. I saw cracks and dents in the wooden boards. After a few minutes of searching, I found a square outline near the corner. I pressed on it. It creaked and lifted a bit. I put the flashlight's handle between my teeth, used both hands, and pulled it up. Underneath, there was a rough set of stone steps going down into darkness. I tested the first step and found it solid. The smell down there was different. It was damp and thick. The air felt heavier. I climbed down, one hand on the stone wall for balance. My flashlight beam moved along the steps, showing dust, small bits of debris, and some kind of moss on the walls. The steps were uneven and cold. I tried to keep my breathing steady. At the bottom, I found a narrow passage. It looked like a stone tunnel, about as wide as my shoulders. The ceiling was low. I had to bow my head to avoid hitting it. My flashlight only reached about 10 feet ahead. Beyond that was darkness. I moved forward. The sound of my boots scuffing on the stone floor seemed to bounce back to me. After a short distance, I found a larger area. It looked like a corridor branching off into two directions. The walls were covered in patches of moisture. There were scraps of what looked like old cloth on the ground, torn pieces covered in black stains. I knelt and touched one piece. It felt stiff and rough. I tossed it aside and moved on. In one direction, I saw a faint reflection, as if something shiny was catching my flashlight. In the other direction, it was just darkness. I decided to go toward the reflection. I walked slowly, careful not to slip on the wet stone. After maybe 20 steps, I found a small alcove carved into the wall. There were several candles there. They were short and thick, the kind you see in old church basements. They were not lit, but the wicks looked black and fresh, as if someone had burned them recently. I touched one wick. It crumbled slightly between my fingers, leaving a bit of soot. It meant they were used not long ago. Someone had been here. I looked around for footprints or other signs. I saw scuff marks on the floor and some scratches on the wall. There were straight lines, maybe made by a tool or a knife. They crisscrossed in no clear pattern. I noticed my breathing getting faster. I took a moment to calm down. There was no reason to panic. I had not seen anyone. Then I heard a sound. It was faint, like a step echoing in a distant corridor. I turned off my flashlight for a moment and listened. At first, I heard nothing. Then I heard another step. It came from somewhere up ahead. It was slow, not hurried. I turned my flashlight back on and pressed forward. The tunnel got narrower again, then opened into a larger chamber. The ceiling dripped water, and the floor was rough, with loose stones scattered around. In the center of that chamber there were more candles, unlit, arranged in a circle. I checked them. They felt warm to the touch. That made no sense. My hand was still a bit cold, and the air here was damp and cool. Why would they feel warm? I didn't understand. I rubbed my hand on my pants and looked around. The scratching marks were on these walls too, but now they looked more like shapes. Nothing that I recognized, just strange lines curving and bending. I heard another step. It sounded like it came from the passage behind me. I spun around, flashlight raised. I saw nothing. The beam showed only the empty corridor and wet stone. My heart beat faster. I felt my skin getting clammy. My throat was dry. I took a few steps toward the sound, careful and slow. Still nothing. I turned back and walked toward a low archway at the far end of the chamber. I had a feeling that I needed to keep moving. The archway led to a long tunnel with a dirt floor. The walls here were not smooth stone. They were rough, with large gaps between the rocks. I saw more scratches, but these ones looked like crude drawings of eyes. Just oval shapes with a dot in the middle. They were all around me, high and low, some small and some bigger. My flashlight caught them one by one as I passed. I felt uneasy. Each step echoed through the silence. The air felt thicker, harder to breathe. I stayed silent, hoping to avoid making any noise. I reached another area that opened into a circular room. It was not large, maybe about 12 feet across. The ceiling was low, and I had to bend my head to avoid hitting it. Everything here was damp. Water dripped from above. The ground was muddy, and my boots sank a bit into the sludge. All around the circular wall, I saw painted eyes. These were not just scratches. They were painted with some dark pigment, maybe old paint or some substance. Each eye was simple, a circle within an oval, but they looked sharp and clear. When I moved my flashlight, it seemed like the eyes followed my movement. Of course, they did not move, but there was something about them that gave me that impression. It felt like being watched by dozens of faces, but with no mouths or noses, just eyes staring. I felt pressure in my chest. I kept my flashlight trained on the walls, checking for a doorway or exit. There was one exit, a small tunnel opposite where I had entered. I started toward it, stepping carefully to avoid slipping in the mud. Then I heard a voice, deep and coming from around me, not from one direction. I swung my flashlight around, looking for a speaker. The voice said something I couldn't understand at first. It was low and rumbling, like someone speaking through a thick wall. I listened. The voice repeated words in a calm but firm tone. It asked who I was. It demanded that I speak. It asked why I had come. The voice was not loud, but it filled the room. I couldn't tell if it was a recording or a person. It sounded too close, yet I saw no one. I shouted that I was just looking around. My voice sounded weak compared to that deep tone. I tried again, speaking louder, and asked who was there. No answer, just a soft rumble. Then it asked about my faith. It asked if I believed in anything. It asked if I trusted what I saw or what I felt. My heartbeat thumped in my ears. I tried to ignore the questions. I looked for a way out, but the tunnel opposite me seemed to narrow and twist. I could try it, but I was not sure where it led. The voice asked about my courage. It asked if I had the strength to continue forward. It said something about the importance of truth. I told it I didn't know what it meant. I said I didn't come here to answer questions. I just wanted to see if anyone was hiding down here. The eyes on the wall seemed to stare. The voice asked again and again why I came. It asked if I believed in the church above or the ground beneath. I told it I didn't believe in anything. I said I was just a guy with a flashlight. The voice grew quieter, but kept talking. It asked if I would keep moving forward or turn back. I didn't know what to do. My stomach felt tight. I could feel sweat on my back. My throat was dry. I took a step toward the exit tunnel. The eyes on the wall seemed to shift. It must have been my imagination, but it felt like their gaze moved as I took another step. I decided to go forward just to see where the tunnel led. I couldn't stand in that room anymore. The voice followed me, asking more questions. It never shouted. It never whispered. Just kept a steady, deep tone. It asked why I didn't answer. It asked if I was afraid. I told it. I had nothing to say. My voice sounded shaky. My flashlight beam showed a narrower passage now. The ceiling got even lower, so I had to crouch. The smell was stronger here, like wet earth and rotten leaves. I stepped carefully over puddles. My boots made a sucking sound in the mud. I heard movement behind me. It sounded like footsteps, slow and deliberate. I didn't turn around. I just kept going. The voice asked if I thought I could escape. I ignored it. I moved on. The tunnel turned left and then right. My knees began to hurt from crouching. I had to put one hand on the wall to steady myself. The stones felt cold and slimy. My flashlight started to flicker. I tapped it, hoping it would stay on. After a few minutes of this narrow passage, I reached a slightly wider space. It was another round chamber, smaller than the last one. The walls here were covered in marks that looked like letters, but they were not letters I understood. They were straight and angular. I ran my finger over one. It was carved into the stone. I heard a voice behind me, asking what I sought. It asked what I hoped to find. I still saw no one, but I felt a chill on my neck. I tried to ask who it was, but got no direct answer. Instead, it asked if I believed that I was alone. I had no answer. I just said I wanted to leave. It asked if I wanted to go back the way I came. I looked around. There was only the tunnel I had come through. No other exits. I realized I would have to return. I turned around and headed back, my heart pounding. Each step felt heavy. On the way back, the voice kept talking, asking why I trembled. I told it to leave me alone. It said nothing for a while, just a low hum. I reached the original circular room with the painted eyes. The eyes looked the same, but now my flashlight showed the floor more clearly. I could see footprints in the mud. Not just mine. They were small, maybe from boots, leading around the perimeter of the room. They looked recent. I pointed my flashlight along the wall and saw an area where some mud had been disturbed. There were bits of candle wax on the floor. I kicked a piece aside. It was soft. I looked at the painted eyes again. My neck was tense, my mouth dry.
I wanted to get out.
The voice asked if I found what I wanted. I said no. I said I would leave and never come back. The voice asked if I would tell others about what I saw. I said no, that I saw nothing. I just wanted to go. The voice asked if I believed that I could forget this place. I said yes. I said I did not care about it. The voice made a low, short chuckle and then ended abruptly. I walked toward the corridor that led me here. My flashlight flickered again, but I hit it with my palm and the beam steadied. I followed my footprints back through the winding tunnels. I kept hearing soft steps behind me, but every time I turned, I saw nothing. The voice spoke less now, but still asked simple questions like, "Where are you going?" Or, "What do you fear?" I stopped answering. I just focused on moving my feet and keeping my balance. My legs felt shaky. After some time, I found the area with the circle of candles on the floor. They were still warm. I did not understand that, so I ignored it. I kept going. The air felt drier as I moved closer to where I started. The smell of old stone and dust replaced the thick dampness. I recognized some of the scratches on the walls. My flashlight showed me the corridor where I first found the cloth scraps. I kept my head low and moved quickly. I reached the bottom of the stone steps I had used to come down. The trapdoor above was still open. I climbed the steps one at a time, listening carefully. There were no voices now, and no steps followed me. When I reached the top, I shone my light around. The old church hall looked empty. The dust still hung in the air. I stepped out and closed the trapdoor behind me. It made a heavy thud. I stood there for a moment, breathing hard. My hands felt sweaty, so I wiped them on my pants. I looked around the empty church. It looked exactly as before. Dirty floors, broken wood, no furniture. I aimed my flashlight at the door I entered through. It was still ajar.
I left the church.
Outside, it was quiet. The street was empty. I turned off my flashlight and shoved it into my jacket pocket. My heart was still pounding, and I tasted sweat on my upper lip. I stood outside the church for a few minutes, trying to steady my breathing. I felt no breeze. There was only stagnant air. I didn't hear voices anymore.
I thought about what I saw down there. Unlit candles with warm wax, painted eyes on the walls, strange scratches, and a voice that spoke from nowhere.
I had no answers, just a sense that something was there. I felt relieved to be out. I wanted to get away from this place and never return. Without looking back, I walked down the empty street and went home. I didn't care if I sounded crazy. I knew what I experienced. There was nothing poetic about it, just old stones, dark passages, warm candles, and a voice that I never saw. I would not go back. There was nothing else to say. I remember standing on the edge of that bridge, looking down at the river, trying to see my face in the water. There was no reflection, nothing familiar, nothing that made sense. I saw something else instead. It was a set of crooked trees and pale shapes moving in slow, strange patterns. I didn't understand it. I tried to lean in closer, but whenever I looked down, the water never showed me my own features. Instead, it showed me something that did not belong here. And I heard something too. A noise. A whisper. I stood there, uneasy, feeling like I had been singled out by something I couldn't explain. I gripped a wooden railing on the side of the bridge and leaned forward. Below me, dark water flowed beneath me. The surface wasn't calm. It was slightly uneven, and the light was low. The sky above me was overcast, giving a cold feel to the day, with a bit of wind pressing against my neck. I squinted, trying to get a better angle, but my face was still missing. Instead, I saw those trees. They looked upside down, like a forest that stretched upward beneath the river, with trunks bent at odd angles. The leaves were a pale, dull color, not green, more like a sickly gray. There were shapes between them, thin and long. They moved a bit, shifting side to side. I didn't hear normal sounds in the water. Instead, there was a quiet whispering. It wasn't in any language I knew. It was soft and constant. I tried to focus on it by tilting my head. My ears picked up a pattern, but I couldn't place it. "Hello," I said out loud. My voice sounded normal, a bit strained, but the whispering didn't stop or answer me. It just continued at the same level, like wind through narrow gaps. I moved a few steps along the bridge. The boards under my boots are old and creak slightly. The railing is rough under my palms. I can see the opposite end of the bridge, or at least I think I can, but it seems too far away. I don't remember it looking this long before. I keep looking down at the water, hoping it'll catch a normal reflection, but it's always that same forest scene. I try to ignore the strange view, but the absence of my own face in that water feels wrong. The tension builds between my shoulder blades. It makes me want to hunch forward. I roll my shoulders to shake it off, but it doesn't help. It feels like someone is pressing down on me, as if I'm being judged for something. I take a deep breath through my nose. The air smells damp and stale. I look straight ahead at the board stretching out before me, and I move slowly, step by step. The bridge seems longer now than it was a moment ago. I stop and look back, expecting to see the end I came from. It's still there, but it looks no closer than the far side. I call out again. "Is anyone here?" My voice drifts off without an echo. The whispering beneath me continues. I don't understand what's happening, and my stomach feels tight. I feel sweat on my forehead despite the cold air. My hands are slightly trembling. I kneel down and run my fingertips across the surface of a plank. The wood is damp and rough. I want something solid and normal to focus on. I press harder until I get a tiny splinter. I grunt quietly and stand up again. I step to the right side and lean over to see if the railing's reflection appears. The bridge's shape is there in the water, with the outline of its beams and the shape of the railing visible. Everything but me is reflected, twisted into that strange upside-down forest. It's as though the forest and the bridge's reflection have merged, but where I should appear, there's just more of that weird landscape. I wave my hand over the edge, and the reflection doesn't show my arm, only that strange scene shifting slightly. as if disturbed by my movement. I feel the pressure on my shoulders getting heavier. My neck tenses, and I clench my jaw. I try to ignore it and move forward. The boards creak under my weight as I walk slowly, focusing on each step. I look ahead, trying not to glance down anymore. After a few dozen steps, I can help it. I look down again. The forest is still there. The pale shapes between the leaves seem a bit closer now. They're tall and thin, with no clear features, but they move slowly, side to side, like they're shifting between the trees. The whispering gets a bit louder, or maybe I'm just imagining it. I lean in and say, "I can't understand you." The whispering continues at the same pace, the same volume. I rub my face with one hand, feeling my stubble, nose, and forehead. I'm still here, still the same person I've always been. But the water refuses to show me. It's as though I'm not part of this place. My chest feels tight. My legs feel heavier. I wonder if I should turn around and go back. I turn and walk in that direction for a while. The boards keep going. I don't reach the end. I stop and turn forward again. I feel my pulse in my neck, a steady, nervous rhythm. I try something else. I find a small chunk of loose wood near the railing, maybe a broken piece. I pick it up and toss it over the side, aiming for the water. I wait for a splash. There is none. It just disappears. The scene beneath doesn't ripple. The whispering doesn't pause. I feel my throat tightening and swallow hard. Come on, I say quietly to myself. I keep walking forward. I count my steps out loud. 1. I get to 50 steps and look back. Both ends look the same distance away. I curse under my breath and punch the railing. The impact stings my knuckles. I see a slight mark where my fist hit. The pain is real. That's something I know for sure. I'm not asleep. This isn't a dream. I lean over the railing again just once more to see if anything has changed. The forest beneath the water still looks the same. The trees are twisted and thick, bending in odd directions. The shapes are moving slower now, or maybe they're just watching. The whispering continues. I try to repeat the sounds I hear just to see if it changes. Has, Raimta, Luta, I mutter, imitating the whispers as best I can. Nothing happens. The pressure on my shoulders remains. It's heavier now, making me hunch. I try to straighten my back, but I can't. It's as if something invisible is pushing me down. I walk faster. My boots slam onto the boards. My breathing grows heavier. Sweat runs down my back. I don't know what else to do, but keep moving. The whispering rises and falls in waves, never stopping. My legs feel tired, but I don't stop. I want to see if the end ever appears. I stare straight ahead. The sky above me is still gray. The wind is still there, but it never gusts hard, just steady light pressure. I try not to think. I focus on the boards. They are uneven, worn. Some are darker than others. I focus on the smell of damp wood. I focus on the weight on my shoulders. It feels like hands pressing down, but I can't see anyone. I swing my arm behind me, feeling the air. Nothing's there. After what feels like a long time, I notice something different ahead. The far end of the bridge looks slightly clearer, as if the fog in the distance has lifted. I see a shape that might be solid ground. I pick up my pace. Each step echoes, dull and hollow. My breathing is fast. My mouth is dry. I just want to reach that end. I don't understand this place. I don't know why I'm stuck here. I just know I need to keep going. As I get closer to what seems like the far side, the whispering grows louder. I cover my ears. It doesn't help. The sound seems to come from all directions, or maybe from inside my head. I grit my teeth and move faster. The weight on my shoulders increases. It's hard to stand straight. I have to bend forward slightly, with my arms hanging at my sides, swinging as I hurry along. I risk one last look at the water. The forest is shaking now, and the pale shapes are clustered together, pressed close to the trunks. Their movements look frantic, and the whispering grows more intense. I want to scream at them, but I know it won't help. I keep going. My boots scrape the wood as I walk. My feet ache, my shoulders burn, and I can smell my own sweat mixing with the damp air. I don't pause or slow down. Instead, I focus on the end of the bridge. It's closer now, maybe just 100 feet away. I can see a muddy bank and some rocks. I don't remember what lay beyond this bridge before, but right now it's all I want. A solid place to stand that isn't suspended over that impossible scene below. I feel the boards under me becoming more solid. They don't creak as much. I step and step until I'm almost there. The whispering is louder than ever, almost a hiss. I try to speak again, just to calm myself. I'm leaving, I say in a strained voice. I'm going. My words sound weak, but at least I can hear them. I step off the bridge and onto firm ground. The dirt is damp and cool. I feel it through my boots. I turn around and look back. The bridge is there, but it looks shorter now that I am on the other side. Not too far away, I see what lies beyond. The tension on my shoulders fades, my back straightens, and I look down at the water from this side. This time, I see my reflection. My face is there. My eyes are tired. My hair is messy. I breathe out, relieved. I don't say anything else. I don't try to explain it. I just step away from the edge and keep walking forward on solid ground. My legs are shaky and my heart is still pounding, but I move. I put the bridge behind me. The whispering fades as I get farther away. I don't know what I saw. I don't know why the water refused to show my face for so long. I don't know why the bridge felt endless. But now I'm here, on the other side. The weight on my shoulders is gone. I keep moving. I feel the wind on my face. I hear normal sounds again. My boots on dirt, the quiet rustle of nearby bushes, my own breathing. The bridge is behind me.
I touch my shoulders, feeling nothing odd.
I look at my hands and see small cuts from the railing. They hurt, but it's a normal pain. I exhale slowly and walk away. I remember stepping into that cave with a steady grip on my lantern and a clear idea of what I wanted. I was searching for some sign of what was rumored to lie inside. People around town had mentioned voices that came back from the darkness with a strange sound, as if the rock walls were bending the words. I wanted to hear it for myself. That was all. But as soon as I passed the entrance, I felt something different in the air. There was a smell like wet stone. There was a dull silence, and then that silence shifted when I spoke my first words. My voice returned, not only deeper but mixed with other words, words I never spoke. After that, I couldn't just turn back and pretend I hadn't heard it. I had to keep going, even when the light from my lantern began to fade and my breath got harder to push out of my lungs. I held the lantern in my right hand, keeping it raised a bit, trying to let its weak light stretch as far as it could. The walls looked slick. There were small droplets of water sliding down the rough surface. The ground under my boots felt uneven and covered with a thin layer of muddy grit. Each step made a soft scraping sound. I moved slowly, leaning forward, trying to see ahead. I knew I shouldn't call out, but I did. "Hello," I said, quiet and cautious. My voice left my mouth in a normal tone. I waited. After a second or two, I heard it coming back. It was my voice, but the tone was deeper, and there was something else. It sounded like it was repeating something else under it, words I didn't recall saying. The sound was hard to make out, like a whisper beneath the echo. I stood still and listened. There was a steady drip somewhere deep inside, echoing too, but my voice didn't. I moved on. The lantern flickered once, and I gave it a small shake. The flame inside danced. The metal handle felt cold. The air was heavy, and it felt like I was drawing each breath through a damp cloth. I tried to breathe through my mouth, but it tasted stale, like old moss. I adjusted my jacket collar and wiped my forehead with my free hand. There was a thin film of sweat there, even though it wasn't hot. It's the tension. I don't want to think about that. I just keep moving slowly, foot by foot, as I walk deeper into the corridor. The ceiling seems to lower and the walls narrow, with small, sharp edges of stone above, which I try not to imagine scraping against my head if I stand up too straight. I stay hunched. I hold the lantern out in front of me, looking carefully at the wet walls. That's when I notice a shape that shouldn't be there. It's on the wall like a reflection of a figure. It looks tall, with a shape like a person. But I'm alone here. I turn around quickly, shining the lantern back the way I came. Nothing, just more rock. I turn forward again. The shape is still there on the wet rock surface, as if the reflection of a man is standing right behind me. But there's no one behind me. I try moving a bit to the side to see if it's a trick of my lantern's light. The shape shifts slightly, but it doesn't vanish. I don't talk this time. I don't want to hear that voice again right now. I just keep walking. My boots sound heavier on the ground than before, and the damp grit sticks to the soles, making each step make a slight squishing sound. My breathing is getting harder. I feel like I'm not getting enough air. I pause and focus on breathing, in and out. It's stale. It's thick. I can feel it burning a little in the back of my throat. I try to calm down, thinking maybe I can turn around now and leave. I point the lantern behind me, but I don't see anything like a clear exit. It's too dark, and the lantern's light isn't strong enough to show me far behind. I keep moving forward. My footsteps echo, and each time they come back different. I hear small phrases mixed with them. I can't make out each word, but I think I recognize some. It's like the echo is talking about me, using my name, describing things I remember from a long time ago. I try to ignore it, but it's hard. It's my own voice, yet not mine, deeper, rougher, and placing words I never said right back into my ears. I grip the lantern tighter. My knuckles feel stiff. I swallow hard, but my mouth is dry. I lift my free hand to my chest and press lightly, as if I can push more air into my lungs by force. It doesn't help. The air doesn't get any fresher. I see a turn up ahead. The cave corridor bends to the left. The ground slopes downward. I notice thin, shiny streaks of mineral deposits on the wall, reflecting the lantern's weak glow. The shape on the wall is still there, always staying at the edge of my vision. Never clear. I try walking closer to the left side of the cave to see if I can force it to move. It moves too, staying just out of direct sight. I point the lantern in that direction, but the light only shows dark rock and wet surfaces. Still, the shape never fully goes away. I start whispering quietly, trying to test the echo again. I'm just trying to find a way out, I say. It's a stupid thing to say. I came in and should know the way out is behind me, but I say it anyway. The echo returns, trying you out. It inserts extra words, or maybe it's breaking my sentence into pieces. I listen carefully. Maybe I can learn something from it, but it's not clear. I feel a tremor in my legs, tension in my stomach.
I don't want to panic.
I keep moving. The corridor widens into a small chamber. The ceiling is low. I have to duck. There are puddles on the ground, shallow pools of dark water. When I step in one, my foot sinks a bit, and cold water seeps into my boot. I clench my teeth. The sound of my footstep in the water echoes back. But the echo doesn't sound like normal water. It sounds like something else. Splashing. I turn around again, hoping to catch whoever might be behind me. I see no one. Just the same walls, the same droplets, and that lingering shape in the corner of my eye. My throat feels scratchy. I lift the lantern closer to my face and breathe near the flame, hoping the small warmth helps. The flame flickers. It's weaker now. I can tell by how dim the chamber looks. I tap the lantern's base, trying to make sure the oil is still feeding the flame. It seems fine, but it's still weaker than before. The darkness around me seems thicker. I can smell something musty, like old clothing left in a damp place. I wonder how deep I've gone. It feels like I've been walking for a long time. My legs are tired, and my eyes feel strained from staring into darkness. I try to speak again, hoping to understand the echo. What do you want? I say. It comes back. Want? You know, inside. The words are scattered. They don't form a proper sentence, but I catch the meaning. It's referring to something inside me. I feel a cold sensation run up my spine. I don't like this. I want to turn back now. I pivot slowly and try to walk the way I came. But after only a few steps, I realize I don't see any familiar markers. I'm not sure which way leads back to the entrance. The path looks the same in both directions. I step one way, and I see that shape move along the wall. I step the other way, and I see the shape again on the opposite wall. It's always there, never approaching, never backing off completely. My breathing gets louder. I can hear it echo. It comes back at me deeper, harsher. It's like the cave wants me to hear my own panic magnified. I can feel my heart thumping in my chest. The lantern's handle is slippery in my hand. I think about turning the lantern off to see if the darkness makes things clearer, but that seems stupid. Without light, you'll see nothing, and I'll probably trip and fall. I keep the lantern on, even though its light is fading. I walk forward again, picking one direction. The ground slopes down more, and I can feel the angle making my steps longer and harder to control. I try to keep my balance. I place my free hand against the wall and feel the wet stone. It's slimy. My fingers come away with some kind of cold, gritty film. I wipe them on my jacket. The echo in here is softer now, more distant. I don't know if that's better or worse. I try to speak again. Tell me what you're saying. I say it slowly, clearly, watching my breath form small clouds in the lantern's glow. The echo returns, but this time it sounds more mixed. I catch pieces. My name is said in a distorted way. A place I remember from years ago, a time I made a choice I'm not proud of. I feel the tension in my chest tighten. I don't know why it's saying these things. The words are not exact. They come back jumbled, but I recognize enough to know it's pulling from my memories. My mouth goes dry again. I swallow hard. I don't respond, I just keep moving. The corridor narrows once more. I have to turn sideways to pass. My shoulder scrapes against the rock, and I grunt from the discomfort. The echo returns that grunt in a strange, broken way. I ignore it. I continue until the corridor widens again. I see small stalagmites on the floor, thin and sharp. I step between them carefully. Each step makes my boots slip slightly on the damp stone. I hold the lantern close, trying to see if there's any sign of where this cave leads. I can tell. Everything looks the same. Wet rock, dark corners, small puddles. There's a point where I realize I'm breathing in very short gasps. I stop walking and force myself to breathe deeper. The air tastes like old mud. I cough once, and the cough echoes back at me with a strange laughter behind it.
I don't know what that laughter means.
It could just be my cough bouncing in a weird pattern. Or maybe I'm hearing what I think I'm hearing.
I try not to think about it.
I take another step. The shape on the wall is there. It's always been there. If I look directly at it, it's just a shadowy pattern on wet rock. But when I'm not looking straight at it, it looks like a person standing at a distance watching me. I try something new. I shout as loud as I can. I know you're here. Show yourself. My voice comes back deeper, twisted, repeating some of my words out of order. I hear my name again. My past again. More fragments of my life that I never said out loud. I listen carefully. Maybe I can figure out what it wants. But the more I listen, the more confused I get. The words are out of sequence, like scraps of conversations I had long ago, repeated in a low rumbling tone. I feel sweat on my forehead again. My jacket sticks to my back, and my throat aches. I continue forward. I try to check the time, but I have no watch. I have no sense of how long I've been here. It could be hours, or just minutes. My legs are sore and my fingers feel stiff. The lantern's flame is even weaker now. The light barely reaches a few feet ahead. I shake it again carefully, trying to stir the oil. It flares for a moment, then settles back to a weak glow. I hold it close to my face and look around. I see a passage on the right. Maybe I can take that route and find a different exit, or at least a change in the air. I turn right and walk slowly. The floor uneven here with small cracks, so I have to place my boots carefully. The echo changes. I don't hear the distorted voices clearly now, just faint whispers. I lean closer to the wall, trying to hear. It's quieter. I focus and pick up a few words. They sound like things I thought of once, but never said. Private thoughts that never came out of my mouth. The hair on my arm stands up. My chest tightens even more. I try to breathe deeply, but I can't. The air won't let me. I cough again. The sound returns, broken, like my own cough mocking me. I follow this passage for a while. It's tight, and at one point I have to duck low and crawl under an overhang. My knees scrape against a stone, and I feel a slight sting on my skin. I hold the lantern awkwardly, trying not to burn myself with the flame. When I emerge on the other side, I stand up slowly and shine the lantern around. There's a small area here that's slightly drier. I can see some dust instead of just wet rock. I step onto it. My boots leave faint prints. I turn around and see that shape again, now reflected on the damp wall behind me. It never went away. I decide to speak again, quietly this time. I'm listening, I say. The echo returns, repeating words I never said out loud, private details about my life that I can't explain. I can feel my heart racing. I try to remain calm. I think about what I can do next. Maybe I can trace my steps back and try another route. I turn around and step back into the tight passage. I move slowly, rubbing my shoulder against the wall again, feeling the cold wetness through my jacket. The air still feels thick. I wonder if there's a spot in the cave where the air is better. After some time, I come back to the larger corridor. I try the other side now, walking carefully, listening to each echo. Sometimes I call out a few words, asking what it wants. Sometimes I remain silent and just listen to what the cave returns. Each time the voice feels closer or farther, depending on where I stand. Each time I see that shape on the walls. Always distant, never coming closer, never leaving. The lantern's flame is weak. I realize I need to find a way out soon, or I'll be in total darkness. I hurry my steps. The echo grows stronger again. Just I call out, I need to leave. It returns, leave, need. Remember, the words come from different angles. I spin around, shining the lantern on every surface. Nothing is there, just rock and water. My breathing is loud. My chest hurts. I try to calm down. I take a step back and feel the edge of a puddle with my heel. The echo repeats something about the past, but I don't want to listen anymore. I pick a direction and walk straight no matter what I hear. As I go upward now, the slope changes. My thighs ache. I climb over a small rise in the floor. My lantern flickers again, and I push forward, ignoring the pain in my chest. The air feels slightly less stale here. I keep going, forcing one foot in front of the other. The echo grows fainter. The shape on the wall is harder to see now. I follow the corridor, hoping it leads back to the entrance. After several minutes of careful steps, I see a faint glow ahead. It's not my lantern, it's natural light. Very weak, but enough to show me a shadow of an opening. I stumble forward, pushing through a narrow gap, and feel fresh air brush my face. I step out of the cave, holding the lantern close, and see the outside world again. The light from outside is dim. Maybe it's late in the day, but it's enough. I breathe in, coughing a bit, but it's fresh air. I don't look back. I don't want to know if the echo can follow me. I move away from the entrance, feeling my legs trembling. I don't know how long I was inside. I don't know what happened. I just know I'm out now, and I can breathe again. I stepped into that old theater with my ticket in hand. It was late, almost midnight. The lobby smelled like dust and old fabric. The walls looked stained. I handed the torn stub to a board attendant who barely glanced at me. He pointed silently down a narrow corridor. I walked inside. The place looked neglected. The floors creaked. The seats were red, but worn out, and some of the armrests felt loose. I had never been there before, but I wanted something different that night, something simple and quiet. I found my seat in the middle row. The audience was small, maybe 20 people, all seated and facing forward. No one spoke. They just sat still, hands on their laps, eyes on the stage. I sat down and the seat made a slight snapping sound as I adjusted myself. I waited. The lights were dim, and there was a single spotlight on the old velvet curtain. After a few minutes, the curtain rose slowly. I leaned forward, expecting actors or at least a prop. The stage was completely empty. No chairs, no tables, no scenery, nothing at all. Just a wooden floor and a dark backdrop. I thought maybe it was some experimental piece. I tried to remain patient. Then I heard voices. They echoed across the room. They seemed to come from the stage, yet no one was there. The voices spoke lines, but I couldn't see anyone. It sounded like a conversation between at least two people. One voice sounded low and firm, the other more tense and quick. I tried to see if there were speakers hidden somewhere, maybe behind the curtains or high above. I didn't see any wires or sound equipment. As the voices continued, I could hear footsteps crossing the stage. The floorboards creaked. I saw no one, but I heard them pacing back and forth. The voices grew louder, as if arguing. Then I heard another pair of footsteps running behind them. It sounded like a small group of invisible actors. I looked around to see how the others were reacting. Everyone sat perfectly still. No one moved, no one laughed, no one whispered. I noticed a man 2 seats to my left. His eyes were open, staring straight ahead, unblinking. I saw a woman in front of me. Her head was tilted at a slight angle as if listening, but she didn't nod, didn't shift, didn't do anything. I tried to clear my throat quietly. No one turned. I felt uncomfortable. I tried to whisper to the person next to me. "Do you see anything?" I asked quietly. He didn't react. He didn't flinch or show any sign that he heard me. It was like sitting next to a statue. I reached out and touched his arm gently. His coat felt rough and old-fashioned, but he didn't respond. I pulled my hand back. On stage, the invisible scene continued. Now I heard what sounded like chairs scraping across the floorboards and glasses clinking. I couldn't see a single object on the stage, but the sounds were clear. The voices rose and fell. They sounded angry at times, then calm, then hurried. I couldn't pick out actual words. It was like a language I didn't fully understand. They spoke quickly, and the echo in the theater made it harder to separate phrases. I decided to stand up. My legs felt tense, and my breathing got faster. I stood in silence for a moment, then turned to walk back up the aisle. As I rose, I expected at least a few people to react, to look at me, to do something. They didn't. I stepped into the aisle. The floorboards behind the rows creaked under my weight. When I reached the exit, I found a thick black curtain hanging across the doorway. I hadn't noticed it when I entered. I thought I came in through a door, not through a curtain. Now it was just this black curtain blocking my way. I reached out and touched it. It felt heavy and rough like old burlap. I tried to push it aside, but it wouldn't move. It felt stuck. I gripped it hard and pulled. It didn't budge. As I stood there, I heard a low whisper coming from the curtain. It was a strange sound, soft and steady, repeating short bursts of sound that I couldn't identify as a real language I knew. It sounded old, with harsh consonants and quiet vowels. I tried to ignore it, but it kept going like someone whispering nonsense right next to my ear. I stepped back and looked for another exit. I saw a side door near the stage to the left of the rows. I walked down the aisle toward it. The theater felt colder now. My arms got goosebumps and my neck felt tight. I reached the side door and tried the handle. It rattled softly but didn't open. I looked closely at the frame. It had no visible lock, but it wouldn't budge. I leaned my shoulder against it, pressed hard, and felt nothing. It was like a sealed wall. On the stage, the footsteps became louder. I still couldn't see anyone, but it sounded like a duo of people running back and forth. I heard what sounded like heavy objects being dragged. I still saw nothing. The voices continued, sometimes shouting, sometimes whispering. My head felt dizzy. I wanted to get out. I felt my heart beating hard in my chest. My hands were sweating. I wiped my palms on my pants. I turned to look at the audience again. Everyone sat frozen. Not a single person blinking. I walked up to one of them and waved my hand in front of their face. No reaction. I spoke loudly. Hello? Can you hear me? Nothing. I tapped one of them on the shoulder. Their body felt real solid, warm even, but they didn't turn or move. I tried shaking one gently, grabbing their shoulders and rocking. Their body swayed slightly, but the head didn't move on its own. It was like a stiff doll, heavier and warmer than a doll would be. I backed away. My breathing got quicker. My throat felt dry. I ran up the aisle to the black curtain again and tried to push through it harder. I leaned my entire body into it, pressing with my arms and shoulders. It gave slightly, but it pushed back, as if something solid was behind it. I tried to grab it at the bottom and lift it, but I couldn't find an edge that lifted. I tried pulling at the sides, but it wouldn't tear. My fingers couldn't get a good grip. It was like trying to pull a piece of thick leather glued to the frame. The whispering from the curtain got louder. The sounds were rapid now, almost like chanting. I stepped back and kicked it, hoping maybe I could break through, but I only hurt my foot. I winced and rubbed my ankle. The whispering continued. I walked down to the stage. Maybe I could find a backstage exit. The stage floor was a few steps up. I climbed onto it, expecting someone to appear, but there was no one. I stepped carefully across the wooden boards. They felt worn and uneven. The voices sounded as if they were right next to me, but I could see nothing. I reached out, trying to feel if someone was standing there, but I touched only empty air. I kept moving, looking for a door behind the backdrop. As I reached the back of the stage, I saw a tall, dark backdrop curtain. It looked dusty and had small tears. I tried to push it aside, hoping there was a door behind it. Instead, I found only a solid wall. I tapped the wall with my knuckles. It sounded hollow. I tried pushing it, but it wouldn't move. There was no handle, no latch, nothing, just a flat surface. On stage, the voices got quieter, but the sounds of movement did not stop. I heard what sounded like hands tapping on the floorboards behind me. I spun around, expecting to see someone crouching there, but there was no one. I felt a chill on my neck, as if someone were breathing near me. I swung my arm behind me. I hit only air. I decided to return to the audience area. Maybe I missed another exit in the dark. As I approached the seats, I saw that some lights above had dimmed further. It was harder to see the faces of the audience, I had to squint. I walked up and down the aisles, running my hands along the walls, looking for any door or window. I found nothing. The walls were solid. The windows I remembered seeing in the lobby were nowhere in sight. The entire place felt smaller now. I listened closely to the voices on stage, trying to catch a familiar word. I couldn't. The language sounded harsh and uneven. Sometimes they paused as if waiting for a response. Other times they interrupted each other. The footsteps never ceased. I tried ignoring them. I tried focusing on my breathing, slowing it down. My heart was still pounding. My shirt felt damp under my arms. I approached one of the audience members and grabbed their face gently, trying to see if they would blink. I pulled their eyelids down lightly. They were warm and moist, like normal eyes. But the person didn't react. I stepped back again. I considered trying to break a seat or tear some fabric. Maybe find something to break down the door. I grabbed one of the loose armrests and pulled. It wobbled but didn't come off. I pulled harder, twisting it. After a minute of struggle, it snapped free. I had a wooden armrest in my hand, about a foot long. It looked solid enough. I carried the armrest to the black curtain of the entrance. I started hitting the curtain with it, trying to pierce it or rip it. The blows made a dull thump as if hitting thick padding. The curtain didn't tear. The whispering got louder. I swung harder, gritting my teeth, feeling sweat drip down my forehead. My arms got tired. I tried again and again, but nothing happened. I stopped and stepped away. My arms shook. I was breathing fast. I wanted to scream at it. I shouted, "Let me out." My voice echoed in the empty space. The whispering continued, unaffected. I tried lighting my phone, but there was no signal, and my phone's flashlight showed nothing special. The walls looked the same. The curtain looked the same. The audience remained still. The invisible voices kept going. I tried calling someone on my phone, but there was no service. I tried sending a text. Nothing went through. The screen showed no bars of signal. The time on my phone didn't change. I checked it 3 times and it stayed on the same minute. I couldn't figure out why. I slipped it back into my pocket. I knelt on the floor near the entrance and tried to slip under the curtain. I got down on my stomach and felt along the bottom edge. The bottom edge seemed fused to the floor. There was no gap. Stood up and tried pushing the curtain with my shoulder again, but it was useless. I walked back to the stage, thinking maybe I could find some kind of tool or rope. I searched the corners, felt the walls. I found nothing loose. I banged on the side walls, hoping for a hollow spot. Nothing. I stomped my feet, kicked a few boards, tried to pry them up with the armrest. The boards were nailed tight. My heart kept racing. My mouth felt dry. I wanted water. I looked around for a glass or bottle, but there was nothing. I listened again to the invisible scene. Now it sounded calmer. I heard quiet voices speaking in low tones as if planning something. I heard soft footsteps circling the stage. They seemed to circle me. I stood in the center of the stage, turning my head in every direction. I couldn't see anyone, but I felt watched. My scalp tingled. The hair on my arm stood up. I swung the armrest in a circle, hoping to hit something invisible. I hit only air. I shouted at the stage, "Stop this. Show yourselves." The voices didn't stop. They went on in that unknown language. I heard laughter, but it was quiet laughter, like someone chuckling softly behind their hand. I rushed off the stage and back into the seating area. I thought maybe I could break a seat apart and use bigger pieces to force the door. I grabbed another seat, one in the back row, and started kicking it. The noise echoed loudly. I kicked it again, trying to break the wooden frame. After several kicks, the seat loosened.
I pulled at it until it snapped.
Now I had a bigger piece of wood. It looked sturdy, maybe 2 feet long, and thicker than the armrest. I marched back to the black curtain at the entrance. I held the wooden piece with both hands and tried to ram it forward like a battering ram. I hit the curtain hard. My wrists hurt from the impact, but the curtain didn't move. I tried again, putting all my weight into it. Nothing changed. I grunted, tried again. Still nothing. The whispering got louder. The words sounded angry now. I pressed my ear against the curtain, trying to make sense of it. It was no use. I felt frustrated and scared. My stomach hurt. My legs were shaking. I considered yelling at the audience members for help, but they were useless. They sat there like statues. I left the entrance and tried searching behind the rows of seats. Maybe there was a hidden door. I touched the walls,
pushed against them. No result. I climbed over the last row of seats to reach the back wall. I slapped the wall with my open palm, feeling for any loose boards. Nothing. The sounds on stage changed again. Now it sounded like objects being placed down, maybe boxes or crates. I heard scraping noises, tapping on wood. I turned to look at the stage. Still empty. The lights had dimmed even more. It was getting harder to see. I walked carefully to the side aisle, feeling along the walls, looking for a light switch or any kind of control panel. I found none. I returned to the center aisle. I stood there breathing heavily, feeling sweat trickle down my back. I tried to focus on one thing at a time. I had a piece of wood in my hand. I had my phone in my pocket. I had my clothes on, nothing else. I considered if I could climb onto the balcony. I looked up. There was a balcony section above. Maybe I could find a door up there. I climbed the small stairs leading to the balcony area. The stairs were steep and my legs felt weak, but I pushed on. The balcony seats were the same. The people sitting there were also frozen. I tried the door at the back of the balcony. Another black curtain hung there. I touched it. It whispered too. The same strange sounds. I tried pushing it. Same result as before. I kicked it. Nothing happened. I sat down in a balcony seat just to rest for a moment. My arms and legs ached. My heart pounded. My throat was sore from shouting. I listened to the show. The voices kept going, never pausing, never stopping. The footsteps came and went. I waited, hoping something would change. Nothing did. I looked down at the stage from the balcony. The spotlight was still shining on the empty floor. I wondered if it would ever end. I stood up again, walked down the stairs, and returned to the main floor. The whispering curtains, the frozen audience, the invisible voices, they all stayed the same. I tried circling the entire theater once more, feeling every surface. Everything was solid and unyielding. Time passed, though I had no idea how long. My phone's clock didn't move. I felt hungry and thirsty. I was tired. My head hurt. I knew I had to keep trying. I grabbed another seat, broke another piece of wood, and kept hitting the curtain. It never tore. I tried yelling again. No one answered. The invisible voices never acknowledged me. They just continued their strange performance. I sat down, feeling my muscles ache. My hands trembled. The stage remained empty. The audience remained still. The black curtains remained sealed. The whispers continued. I kept breathing. My body tense. My mind stuck in that place waiting for something to give, hoping for a single moment of change. I remember the moment I stepped through the heavy wooden door. My shoes made a dull sound on the polished floor. The air inside that gallery felt thick, as if something clung to my clothes and skin. The collector who had invited me was nowhere in sight. The room was quiet. There were no windows, only pale overhead lights that formed harsh shadows on the walls. Every painting looked like a headshot, each one showing a human face in detail, but I recognized none of them. The eyes in each painting seemed to follow me. I tried to ignore it, but it was hard. I felt my heart beating in my ears. I walked deeper into the room and past a few rows of these paintings. There were dozens, each frame large and well crafted, each face painted with smooth brushstrokes and realistic colors. I could see pores on their skin and the fine texture of their hair. Their eyes seemed wet. I stopped in front of one. The face looked like that of a middle-aged man with a thin mustache. He had dark circles under his eyes. I moved from side to side. His pupils followed me. It wasn't just the illusion of normal paintings. It felt like the man in the painting was watching me. I lifted my hand in front of that painting. I wanted to see if the eyes would track my hand. They did not move in a normal way. The gaze seemed fixed, but still it felt like it followed me. I felt my stomach tighten. I backed away and called out for the collector. There was no answer. The silence felt heavy. My voice bounced off the walls. I rubbed my arms. The air wasn't cold, but I felt small bumps on my skin. I decided to find the collector in the other rooms. I walked along the main hall, looking for a door. I turned a corner and found a larger chamber also filled with similar paintings. They were arranged in neat rows, no names, no plaques, just painted faces, all different. Men, women, older, younger, all staring straight ahead. None of them showed any emotion. They looked blank, just staring forward. And yet I couldn't shake the feeling that they watched my every move. I saw a door at the far end and walked toward it. The floor creaked under my weight. I pushed the door. It opened with a slight squeak. Inside, I found a smaller room with a single painting on the far wall. A small lamp above it provided focused light. I approached it slowly, feeling a strange heaviness in my legs. My eyes locked onto that painting. It showed a face I knew well, my own, painted with extreme detail, as if the artist had studied my features for hours. I saw the shape of my nose, the lines at the corner of my eyes, the shade of my hair. Everything was correct, except for the expression. The face in the painting looked terrified. The eyes were wide, the mouth slightly open, as if caught mid-shout. The skin looked tense, as if stretched too tight. I brought my face closer. I didn't remember ever making that expression. It didn't feel like something I would do. My breathing got faster. I felt sweat forming on my palms. I stood inches from the painting, trying to make sense of it. The paint looked fresh, as if it had not fully dried. I could see tiny ridges where the brush had pressed harder. I smelled something faint, like oil and varnish. As I stared, I saw a slight movement in the painted face. The eyebrows twitched. It was not a trick of the light. I pulled my head back. The painted eyes seemed to shift. The mouth changed shape. I took another step back and hit the opposite wall with my shoulders. My heart rate shot up. The painted version of me moved again. The jaw dropped lower. The lips parted more. I reached up and touched my own face. My jaw was clenched tight, not open. I looked around for anyone else. The room was empty. The door behind me was still open. I took a deep breath and forced myself to step forward again. I wanted to check if I was seeing things. I leaned in. The painted face now had tears in its eyes. Painted tears, but they looked wet and real. The lips quivered. I felt dizzy. I blinked hard to clear my head. When I opened my eyes, the painting's expression had grown more desperate. The eyes darted from left to right. I heard a faint sound. It was low and soft, like someone whispering behind a closed door. I turned around. There was no one there. I faced the painting again. The whispering grew louder. It seemed to come from the walls themselves. The other paintings, the ones outside in the hall, also made sounds now. I could hear muffled voices like a distant crowd, speaking in hushed tones. They spoke words I could not understand. The language felt broken or scrambled. My name might have been mixed in, or maybe not. I couldn't be sure. I stepped out of the small room and looked at the other paintings. The eyes in those frames moved now, following me more obviously.
I watched one painting.
The face's eyes slid to the side as I walked past. Another painting's lips trembled. I saw a man painted with a scar over his left cheek. His lips moved silently, forming words that never fully reached my ears. I backed away. I kept glancing behind me. I tried the door I had come through earlier. It was closed now. I turned the handle. It didn't budge. I pressed my shoulder against it. It felt solid. I tried harder, putting all my weight into it. Nothing. I looked around for another exit. There had to be a way out. I didn't want to call out again because I felt that if I made noise, I would encourage the voices. My mouth felt dry. I crept along the hallway, my footsteps slow, trying not to draw attention. But the paintings were everywhere. Each step brought me in front of new faces. They weren't static. Some blinked, some parted their lips as if to speak. I heard soft murmurs. I felt a prickling sensation on the back of my neck. My throat felt tight. I tried another door, locked. I ran my fingertips along the edges of the frames. I touched one painting surface lightly. The paint felt smooth but also warm, as if alive. I jerked my hand away. The murmurs got louder. I turned a corner. I saw a narrow corridor that I had not noticed before. At the end of it, I saw another door. I approached it. As I got closer, the whispers grew louder. They formed a kind of soft chorus. I could make out a few words. Trade, replace, escape. They spoke these words in uneven rhythms, as if struggling to form sentences. I tried the door at the end of the corridor. It was locked. I checked my pockets. I had my phone, my wallet, my keys, and a small flashlight that I always carried. I took out the flashlight and shone it around. The walls were plain white. The frames were made of wood, dark and heavy looking. The lights above were simple fixtures with no visible switches. I tried to find a switch or a breaker panel. Nothing. I moved slowly along the walls, looking for a hidden latch or something I could use to open a door. The whispering continued. I heard my name again. It sounded like my voice but distorted. I spun around. I faced the painting of myself again. I did not remember walking back to that room, but there it was in front of me. The door behind me must have led me around in a circle. My painting now looked different. The figure inside it had changed position. He had one hand raised as if pressing against the inside of the canvas. His eyes were red, wet, and he stared directly at me. His mouth moved slowly. I leaned in and heard faint words. "Let me out." My stomach twisted.
I took a step back.
The figure in the painting pressed his palm against the canvas, making a slight bulge in the surface. The paint seemed to stretch like thin rubber, pushing outward. I reached out and touched it. It was solid, but I felt a slight vibration. The figure's eyes followed my hand. I felt nauseous. I had to get out. I turned and ran toward the main hall. As I passed the other paintings, they all seemed more alive now. Some twisted their heads slightly. Others moved their lips silently. Their eyes followed me. I tried not to look at them. I just kept moving my shoes, which squeaked on the floor. I reached the main entrance where I had come in. The heavy wooden door was still there. I grabbed the handle and pulled. It did not move. I threw my weight against it. It felt like it was bolted shut. I pounded on it with my fists. My knuckles hurt. I shouted for help, but my voice sounded small in that space. I listened. No response except the whispers, which turned into a soft laughter mixed with strange words I couldn't piece together. I tried another hallway. This one led me into a storage area or something similar. There were fewer paintings here, more gaps on the walls. I saw wooden crates stacked against a corner. I saw a cloth draped over something. I pulled the cloth away, and it revealed a large framed painting face down. I lifted it carefully and turned it around. It showed a man I did not recognize. He had bruises under his eyes and his lips were parted as if gasping. I put the painting down. I didn't want to look at it. I tried to check behind the crates for a window. Nothing. The walls were solid. The crates were nailed shut. The murmurs followed me here. They were quieter, but still present. I noticed a small vent near the ceiling which was too high to reach. I tried to pull a crate underneath it, but the crates were heavy and sealed. I strained and managed to move one a few inches. It was not enough. I returned to the main hall and began to circle the perimeter. I ran my fingertips along the walls, searching for any catch or hinge. Nothing stood out. The lights buzzed softly, and I felt the sweat on my forehead. My shoulders were tense, and my heart hammered in my chest. I stopped at one of the paintings to examine it closely, hoping to learn something from them. I picked a painting of a woman. She had short hair and a blank expression. As I leaned in, I saw her eyes shift toward me, and her lips parted slightly. I heard a soft whisper. It sounded like trade places. I stepped back. I tried another painting. A man with a beard. His eyes followed me, and he whispered, "No exit." Then switch. Then become. I tried to piece together what they wanted. They repeated certain words. Replace. Become. Escape. It felt like they were suggesting that one of us had to take the other's place. That maybe I was expected to enter the painting and let the painted figure out. But I had no intention of doing that. My stomach tightened, and my breathing got heavier. I looked back at the painting of myself. It was now at the end of the hall. I did not remember it being there. The figure inside it looked more alive. He pressed both hands against the inside of the canvas, stretching the painted surface outward. I saw small cracks forming in the paint. The figure's eyes were locked on mine. He mouthed something silently. His lips formed the word help. I tried to ignore him and moved to another door. I pulled the handle. It was locked. I kicked it. The sound echoed. I tried another door, also locked. I circled around, returning again to the entrance. The paintings seemed to shuffle their positions. They were never where I remembered them. I felt dizzy. I wiped sweat from my forehead and kept searching. The whispers got louder. They sounded impatient. I could hear words more clearly now. "He must switch," they said. "He cannot leave as he is." I grabbed a painting off the wall and tried to pry it out of its frame. The wood did not give easily. I banged it against the floor. The whispers turned into a low hiss. The lights flickered. I paused and looked around. Every painting in the room stared directly at me now. Their eyes moved as one. Their mouths opened and closed, forming words I could not fully catch. I froze. My muscles shook. My head ached. I realized I needed another approach. There had to be a hidden lock, a key, something that could open the exit. I searched my pockets again, just my keys, wallet, phone, flashlight. The phone had no signal. I turned on the flashlight and aimed it at the floorboards near the door. Maybe there was a loose plank. I tapped the floor with my heel. Nothing hollow. I tried the flashlight on the walls. I noticed a slight seam in one corner near the floor. I knelt down and ran my fingernails along it. It was a small panel. I pried at it. My nails bent painfully, but I managed to get a grip. The panel popped open. Inside, I saw a thin strip of metal and a tiny lever. I flicked the lever. I heard a click. I ran back to the entrance door and tried the handle again. It was still stuck. I went back and pulled the piece of metal. It slid out of place. Another click. I tried the door again. This time, it gave a little. The murmurs rose to a frantic pitch. I heard my own voice behind me. I turned around. The painting of myself was right there, a few feet away. He pressed against the canvas so hard that the surface bulged out like a bubble about to burst. His eyes stared directly into mine. He looked desperate. His lips moved, saying something I could not hear. I felt guilt and fear at the same time, but I could not understand why. My gut told me not to let him out. I grabbed the handle and pulled the door with all my strength. The door opened a crack. Cold air rushed in. I pulled harder. The painting of myself began to tear from inside. I heard the stretching sound of paint and canvas. The figure's fingers poked through, covered in wet paint. He reached out toward me. I dropped the flashlight and grabbed the door with both hands. I pulled until the gap widened. The figure's hand stretched toward my back. I felt something moist brush my shirt. I lunged forward and forced my way through the gap. I found myself in a dark corridor. The door slammed shut behind me. I heard muffled murmurs on the other side. I saw a faint red exit sign ahead. I walked toward it, my shoes scraping on concrete now. I reached the exit door and pressed the push bar. It gave way and I stumbled into a deserted alley. The air outside smelled like rain and garbage. I stood there catching my breath. I turned around. The alley door was unmarked. I tested it. It was locked from the outside. I stepped back, feeling the tension in my shoulders start to ease. I still heard nothing from inside, just silence. I looked up. No windows. The building looked plain and empty. I knew I didn't want to go back in. My clothes were damp with sweat. My heart was still racing. I leaned against a brick wall and tried to steady my breathing. I wiped my face with my sleeve. I tried to forget what I had seen inside. My mind felt shaken, but I focused on the present. I was out. I had left the gallery behind. I moved away from that door down the alley and toward the streetlights in the distance. I arrived at the hotel after a long day on the road. It is late. The building looks old. The sign outside has paint peeling off, and the lights behind the letters flicker. The lobby is empty. No sounds, no footsteps, no conversations. I checked in at the front desk. The man behind the counter gives me a room key without asking many questions. His voice is low and flat. He doesn't look at me for long. Just hands me a small metal key with a leather tag labeled room 30. He points toward the old elevator at the end of the hall and walks away through the door marked office. I stand there for a moment, waiting to hear other guests or see someone cross the lobby, but I see no one else. It feels strange, but I'm tired, so I don't question it too much. I take the elevator. It trembles as it rises, and the wooden walls with chipped paint smell of old varnish. The numbers change slowly. 2nd floor, 3rd floor. I step out and find myself in a long hallway with faded red carpet and old wallpaper. No doors are open, no voices, just dim ceiling lights, spaced far apart, leaving patches of shadow on the floor. I reach room 30. The door is heavy, and the doorknob turns with a stiff click. Inside, the room smells like stale air and perfume. I flick on the light. It works, but it's yellowish, weak, and uneven. On my left is a closet door, a dresser, a small round table near the window, and a single bed with a heavy old quilt. The bed is made. On the dresser are some personal items that don't belong to me. A silver brush with strands of hair stuck in it. 2 old perfume bottles, one with its cap off and brownish residue around the rim, and a pair of leather gloves on the footboard. On the nightstand, I see envelopes with letters sticking out. A pair of women's shoes rests by the bathroom door. The closet door is half open, and inside I can see hanging clothes that don't belong to me.
Male and female clothes, all old-fashioned, mostly grey or black, look worn. It's like someone else's room. I set down my bag and stand there unsure. I consider going back to the front desk, but I'm tired and assume maybe they messed up the housekeeping. Maybe this hotel reuses old props for decoration. I can smell anything rotten or see anything dirty. It just looks old. I open a drawer in the dresser. Inside are folded handkerchiefs, a pair of suspenders, and some yellowed papers. I take one out. It's a letter. The handwriting is old-fashioned, with strong slanted letters. It's addressed to someone I don't know. The words talk about waiting, not leaving, staying inside. I put it back. I don't want to get involved. I just need a place to sleep. I use the bathroom, wash my face, brush my teeth. The water runs clean, but smells metallic. The bathroom mirror is cloudy. I see my own face, tired, a bit pale. My hands feel cold. I look behind me, expecting something strange, but nothing moves. The silence is heavy. I return to the bedroom, close the closet door, put the shoes under the bed so I don't have to look at them, and try to relax on the bed. The mattress is firm and dusty. I cough a little. I check the time on my phone. There's no signal. The Wi-Fi bars appear weak. I try to connect. No success. I turn off the lamp and lie in the dark. The hotel must be old enough that the walls are thick. I can't hear any traffic. It's too quiet. I must have dozed off at some point. I wake up to a noise. The door hinge squeaks. I lift my head. The door that leads to the hallway stands closed, but I heard something. I sit up, heart pounding. Oh wait. Then I hear a whisper, faint, coming from outside somewhere in the corridor. I listen hard. Someone whispers something I can understand. Then I catch my name. It's there. They say my name in a low voice. More voices join in. They don't shout, they hiss. I get out of bed, legs shaky, and approach the door. I press my ear to it. The whispers continue, overlapping too low to make out the words. But I hear my name again. A soft, drawn-out whisper. I hold my breath. Then I step back and look through the peephole. At first I see nothing but a distorted view of the hallway. Then I notice movement. Shapes, blurry silhouettes, shifting back and forth between rooms. They move without sound. No footsteps, just these soft, sliding movements. I try to focus my eye, but the image through the peephole is too distorted. I see at least 2 or 3 figures, but they seem to fade or blur at the edges. They move from door to door, sometimes pausing in front of one, then passing through as if the doors don't stop them. I pull away, heart pounding. I wonder if I'm dreaming, but I know I'm awake. My mouth is dry. I turn on the light again. The room looks the same. The letters, the brush, the gloves, the clothes. They don't feel like random objects. They feel like someone's possessions. I open the door a crack and peek into the hallway. It's empty now, just the faint light from the ceiling fixtures. The carpet looks worn, with no footprints. I don't see anyone. I close the door again, turn the lock, and slide the chain in place. I try to calm down but can't. I hear a faint rustling in the closet. I open it again, half expecting someone inside, but it's empty. The clothes sway slightly as if touched by a breeze, but there is no breeze. The window is closed. I open the window and look outside. The street below is dark with a few street lamps, a closed store, a parked car, and no movement. The air is cold. I close the window again. I sit at the table and pick up one of the letters on the nightstand. The envelope is unsealed. Inside there's a note. It's short. It mentions that we cannot leave until he understands. There's no name signed. Another letter talks about the new guest, saying he must see what we left behind. I feel my stomach clench. They're talking about me. I drop the letter on the table. I consider leaving right now, but I'm curious and I feel a strange sense that I can't just walk out. Maybe it's the tone of those voices. They said my name. They know I'm here. I need to understand what's happening. I open the dresser drawers again, searching for clues. I find more letters, all written by different hands, all talking about waiting, staying put, not being able to leave. They mention rooms, hallways, doors that won't open. They mention a need for someone from outside to acknowledge something. They never say what, just that they are stuck. They talk about items, clothes, perfumes, Gloves, shoes, their personal possessions. They mention that these things are anchors, that they cannot move on without these objects being recognized. I'm confused, but I keep reading. I find a heavy ledger book behind the folded clothes. The pages are filled with names and room numbers. Many names are repeated. Some pages have deep scratches over them. Some names are crossed out. I see my name on one of the last pages, written in the same slanted handwriting, followed by a question mark. My heart pounds. I don't know what they want from me. They want me to understand, but understand what? Hallway whispers start again. I can hear them through the door. I decide to step outside. I need to see if anyone is at the front desk. I need to talk to that clerk. I open the door quietly. The hallway is dim. The ceiling lights flicker. I walk slowly, footsteps soft on the carpet. I pass other doors. They all have room numbers but no sound inside. I reach the elevator and press the button. Nothing happens. I try the staircase at the end of the hall. The door is locked. I jiggle the handle. It won't budge. I return to the elevator and press the button a few more times. Suddenly, I hear a soft hum. The elevator arrives and the door opens. It's empty. I step in and press the lobby button. The elevator rattles down. When the door is open, the lobby is dimly lit. I see the desk and the office door behind it. I walk to it and knock. There is no answer. I try to open it, but it's locked. I call out, but there is no response. The front door of the hotel, the entrance I came through, is closed. I try to open it, but it won't move, as if stuck. I pull harder, but nothing. I feel panic rising, and I call out again, louder. I shout, and my voice echoes, but there is no one who answers. I look around the lobby. I see old chairs, a luggage rack, and an umbrella stand. There is no sign of life. I step behind the front desk and look for a phone or a key box. I find a phone with a dial tone. I try to call the local operator, but all I get is static. Then nothing. I hang up. I find a drawer with old keys. Many keys, each with a room number. Some are dusty, some look unused. I find the ledger with guest names behind the desk. The last entry is mine. Before that, there are names I don't recognize. No one else has checked in for months. The entries stop making sense after a certain date. They mention guests arriving but never leaving. I hear a whisper behind me. I spin around, but there's no one there. I feel the hair on my arm standing up. I step back into the elevator and ride up to my floor again. The hallway looks unchanged. I try a different approach. I open doors that aren't locked. Most rooms are locked. But room 32, inside it's similar to mine, different items, a hat on the chair, a cane leaning against the wall, letters scattered on a desk. They say similar things. They're trapped, cannot leave unless someone identifies what they left behind and acknowledges their existence. They say the items tie them to this place. They mention that the visitor must see them, hold them, understand that they belong to real people who once stayed here and never moved on. They don't mention death, only that they're stuck in a loop, forced to linger. I try room 306 locked. Room 308 opens. Inside I find more items. Dresses, ribbons, jewelry. More letters, always the same theme. They need help. They mention that I must speak to them, address them by their names, but I don't know their names. The letters are signed with initials, never full names. The whispers in the hall increase. They sound annoyed. Repeat my name, telling me to return to my room. I walk back to my room and close the door. I face the items inside, pick up the gloves, hold them, cold and stiff. I speak out loud, asking who they belong to. Get no answer. I sit on the bed, say that I see their things, see their letters, understand they're stuck here. I say I want to help them. My voice shakes. I feel ridiculous talking to an empty room, but something changes. The light flickers. The closet door creaks. A voice hisses my name again, softer now. I stand up and say that I will try to understand. I pick up one letter and read it aloud. It describes a person waiting in this hotel, unable to leave. It describes them losing track of time, being forced to remain, as if the hotel itself held them. I say out loud that I acknowledge them. I say I know they were here before me. I pick up each item and hold it. The brush, the shoes, the gloves. I say I see them. I say I know they belong to someone who lived a real life. I say they are not forgotten.
The whispers outside grow louder, then fade. I walk to the closet and touch the clothes. They feel dry and old. I say, I recognize that they were worn by real people. I say I know they're not just decorations. The voices shift. I can understand their words, but they sound calmer, less threatening. I feel the doorknob vibrate. I step back and watch as the door swings open. The hallway light looks brighter. I look through the peephole again. The blurred figures appear, but this time they don't slide around. They stand still. I open the door and step out. The hallway feels different. The lights are steady. The figures remain blurry, but I sense their attention on me. I say out loud that I'm here to set them free if I can. I tell them I read their letters. I saw their items. I understand they're trapped because no one acknowledges that they once were here. They are bound to these objects, these personal belongings. I return inside and gather all the items into a pile on the bed. The clothes from the closet, the letters, the shoes, the brush, the gloves, the perfume bottles. I pick them up and carry them out into the hallway. I leave them on the floor so that the blurred figures can see. I say that I'm returning their possessions to them, that I'm not keeping them locked away. I say that I respect their need to be seen.
I don't know what else to do.
The figures move closer. I cannot hear footsteps, but I feel their presence like a shift in the air. The whispering becomes soft breathing. I watch them reach out, or at least I think they do. Their forms ripple. After a few moments, the items on the floor look different, less substantial, almost faded. The letters are now blank and the clothes look colorless. The blur of the figures intensifies. Then they vanish. Just like that. No flash of light. No sudden gust of wind. They just disappear. The items remain, but now they look like old rags, ruined scraps. I pick up a piece of cloth. It crumbles in my hand. The letters are empty envelopes, brittle and blank. I feel a weight lift from the air. The hallway seems normal. I can hear a faint hum of something outside. Maybe traffic. I walk to the elevator. The button lights up when I press it. The elevator comes, and I ride down to the lobby. The lights there are brighter now. The front door opens without resistance. Outside, the street looks normal. There's a cold breeze and a distant sound of a truck passing by. I look back at the hotel sign. The lights still flicker, but now I see a reflection of my own face in the glass door. Calm. No longer pale. I walk away from the building, feeling my legs relax. I don't know what those figures were, but they were trapped. They needed someone to see their possessions and understand that they mattered. I don't question it further. I'm just glad I can leave. I head down the street looking for a place that's open, maybe a diner. I want coffee. Something hot and normal. I keep walking and don't look back. I pushed the door open and stepped inside with my shoulders tense. I had come to this place because someone told me it sold rare objects. I expected old furniture or maybe strange tools. Instead, I found rows of rooms with shelves behind glass doors and old cabinets. I walked along a narrow hallway lit by a few dim lights. The place smelled like dry wood and dust. It felt quiet. I heard no footsteps, no voices, nothing. I reached the end of a corridor and saw a door slightly open. I decided to look inside. I stepped into the room and saw 3 large musical instruments. A piano, a violin on a wooden stand, and a harp leaning against a low bench. They looked clean. There were no scratches on the piano surface, no worn strings on the violin, no chipped wood on the harp. They looked new, as if nobody had ever touched them. There were thick curtains near the windows and the floor was dark and shiny. There were no chairs, no other furniture besides a small table against the wall. The table had a few old papers, maybe sheet music, but I did not recognize the notes. The handwriting was strange, uneven. I couldn't read it well. I closed the door behind me. The latch clicked softly. I stood still and listened. The room had no sound. I didn't even hear my own breathing. I tried to clear my throat, and I heard that faintly, so my hearing was fine. The instruments, though, were silent. I approached the piano. I dragged my fingertips across its surface. The wood felt smooth and cold. I pressed one of the keys. It went down without resistance. There was no sound. I pressed another key. Still nothing. I pressed several keys in a row, pressing hard, then pressing softly, but none produced any sound. It was like pressing a key on a piano that had no strings inside, but the lid was closed. I lifted it. The strings were there, perfectly aligned and shiny. I touched a string carefully. It felt tight. I tried plucking it with my fingernail. It vibrated under my touch, but I heard nothing. I stepped back and tried the violin next. I ran a fingertip over its strings. They were tense and felt right. I picked up the bow resting beside it. I drew the bow across a string, pressing down as I had seen violinists do. I had no real skill, but I expected at least a screech. There was no sound at all. It was completely silent. I tried the harp next. I pulled one of its strings. It vibrated, but it produced no sound. I let my hand go limp. I stared at these instruments. All perfect, all silent. While I stood there, I became aware of a quiet melody. It was very faint, but I could hear it. It came from somewhere inside the room or just beyond it. The melody sounded slow and steady, with notes that rose and fell. It was pleasant at first, but something about it felt off. My neck hairs stood up. I looked around. The curtains were not still. They moved a bit, shifting as if caught by a light breeze, but I felt no air movement. I closed my eyes and listened. The melody was still there, but I could not find its source. I stepped toward the window and grabbed the curtain. It felt heavy. I held it still for a moment. When I let go, it shifted again, as if pulled by an invisible hand. I looked behind it. The window was closed. There were no cracks. I tried to open the window, but the latch was stuck. I pulled harder, but it would not budge. I tried to open the door through which I had come. The knob turned, but the door did not move. I pressed my shoulder against it. It felt solid. I said something out loud. "Hello." My voice sounded weak in my ears. I realized I was whispering. I tried to speak louder. My throat felt tight, so I forced the words out. "Is anyone here?" My voice came out in a low tone and sounded distant. I felt a small panic rising in my chest. The melody grew a bit louder, still soft, but more noticeable. I turned around and saw the violin strings moving on their own. They vibrated very slightly, yet made no sound. The piano keys began to lower and rise on their own, as if someone was playing them. The harp strings moved with small, careful, controlled movements. I saw them work together as if a silent orchestra were playing a piece I could only partially hear. The melody I heard did not match exactly what I saw, but it seemed related. My hands trembled. I backed away until I felt my spine against the wall. I tried to ignore the instruments and focus on something else. I pressed my palms against my face. My breathing was shallow, and sweat began forming on my forehead. I tried to speak again, but my voice was weak, sounding as if something were pressing on my vocal cords from inside, preventing me from using my normal volume. I tried yelling, but only managed a strained whisper. The melody in the background became more unsettling. It was no longer pleasant. It sounded uneven, with notes dragging on. I could feel something pressing against my mind, as if my own thoughts were getting thinner. I tried to think about why I came here, but couldn't remember what led me to this house, only that it was known for rare collectibles. I tried to recall the face of the person who told me about it, but couldn't. I clenched my fists and looked at the instruments again. The piano keys moved in a slow pattern, each key pressing down about halfway and then releasing. The violin strings vibrated, and the harp strings trembled. None of these movements produced any sound. Still, the melody persisted, coming from somewhere else, nowhere I could see. I walked around the piano looking for hidden speakers or devices. I looked under it, checked its sides, and tried to lift the lid again. Nothing explained the silent motion of the keys. The violin floated slightly above its stand, wobbling as if held by an invisible hand. My chest tightened. I realized I couldn't feel my heartbeat clearly. My arms felt weak. I tried flexing my fingers, which responded slowly. I tried pinching my thigh to see if I was asleep or unconscious. I felt pain, so I was awake. I tried focusing on the details of the room. The floor was wood, polished well. The walls were painted a dull white. There were no paintings or mirrors. The only furniture in the room was the piano, the violin stand, the harp, and the small table with the papers. I grabbed one of the papers to see if it could tell me something. The notes on it were drawn by hand, but not in any standard musical format I knew. The lines were uneven. There were strange marks, shapes that didn't resemble musical notes. I recognized. I dropped the paper and heard it rustle as it hit the floor. That sound was clear. So, inanimate objects could make noise. Yet the instruments were silent. This made no sense to me. The melody in the background became clearer. I could pick out a pattern. It repeated a phrase of about 7 or 8 notes, then paused for a moment, then repeated again. Each repetition sounded more intrusive. I tried humming to break the silence. My voice came out as a faint hiss. I tried stomping my foot on the ground. I heard a dull thump. That worked, so I could still make sound with my body. I clapped my hands. That produced a soft sound, weaker than normal, but audible. I tried speaking again. "I want to leave," I said. The words came out slow and I needed to push them out. It felt like something was grabbing my throat from inside. I approached the violin and tried to grab it. It jerked away from my hand. I stepped back and tried the harp. Its strings moved as I reached for them, pulling away without anyone visible there. I tried the piano keys again, pressing them down as hard as I could. I even tried to hit them. My knuckles impacted the keys with a dull sound of wood against bone. I felt pain in my hand, but no musical note came out. The melody in the background became louder in my head. It sounded sweet and calm, but I knew it was not calm. I felt unsettled. I felt as if I could not trust my own thoughts. I decided to leave this room no matter what. I walked to the door and tried the handle again. It turned, but the door seemed blocked. I pressed my shoulder against it and shoved. My shoes squeaked on the floor. The door rattled, but did not open. I tried kicking it near the bottom. I heard a thud. The door did not budge. I moved to the window and tried pulling the latch again, using both hands. My arm strained, and the latch bent slightly but did not open. I tried punching the glass. My fist hit it, and I felt pain. But the glass did not crack. It felt sturdier than normal glass. I looked around for something heavy. The harp was large, but I didn't want to touch it after what I saw. The piano was too big to move. The violin stand was small, just a piece of wood. I picked it up and tried hitting the glass with it. It made a hollow sound, not enough to break anything. I threw it at the door. It bounced off and clattered to the floor. The sound of it hitting the floor was soft, but at least normal. I stood still for a moment, breathing heavily. My neck felt stiff, my tongue felt thick, and my ears rang slightly. But I could still hear that melody. The curtains kept shifting. I tried to see if there was any gap in the floorboards or ceiling. I found nothing. I tried pressing my ear against the wall. I heard nothing but that repeating melody inside my head. I tried walking around the room, feeling the walls with my hands and looking for a hidden door or a panel. After a few minutes, I found nothing. The instruments kept moving without sound. The piano keys pressed down in a slow pattern. The violin strings twitched, and the harp strings tightened and relaxed. I realized my legs felt weak. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. I focused on breathing, in through my nose, out through my mouth. I could smell my own sweat now. My shirt stuck to my back. I rubbed my temples and tried to think of a way out. I considered breaking the piano. Maybe if I could rip out a piece of it, I could use it as a tool to pry open the door. I moved toward the piano again and tried lifting the lid higher. It resisted. I pulled harder, but the wood did not crack. I tried kicking the piano legs. My foot hurt. I yanked at the violin stand on the ground and tried wedging it between the door and the frame. The stand bent, but did not open the door. The melody seemed to slow down. The notes stretched longer, and each pause felt heavier. I noticed my thoughts were not stable. I could not remember why I wanted to leave this room. I knew I had to, but the reason felt distant. My throat felt swollen. I tried to talk to myself. I need to get out of here. My voice came out muffled. It sounded like I was talking through a thick scarf. I slapped my own face, feeling the sting on my cheek. That was loud enough. The instruments never made a sound. They only moved. I decided to ignore the instruments and focused on the door again. I crouched down and looked at the gap under the door. I saw dim light on the other side. I pressed my fingers into the gap and tried to pull, but could not get a grip. I stood up and backed away, then ran at the door and slammed my shoulder into it. Pain shot down my arm. I tried again. The door rattled. I tried a third time. Something cracked. I pushed again. The latch gave way a bit. I pressed harder using my legs and body weight. The door creaked. I pushed again, harder this time. My muscles burned. The door opened slightly, enough for me to squeeze my arm through. I felt a smooth wall outside. I pulled my arm back and tried pushing the door inward. It gave another inch. I kept pushing until I could fit one shoulder through. I pressed my head through the gap.
my neck scraping against the wood. I could see the hallway. There was no one there. I forced my whole body through the gap, bruising my chest and hips. I stumbled into the hallway and landed on my knees. I looked back at the door. It slammed shut behind me. I could still hear the melody faintly, but now it seemed quieter. I stood up and ran down the hallway. I did not look back. I tried a side door. It opened into a room with shelves of old clocks. I saw no one. The clocks were silent, all their hands moving backward. I ignored them and tried another door. Finally, I reached the front of the house. The main door was unlocked. I stepped outside and closed it behind me. I stood on the sidewalk and looked around. The street was empty. I could see cars parked along the curb and a street lamp flickering. I took deep breaths. The melody was still in my head, but weaker now. I tried speaking. "Hello," I said. My voice sounded normal again. My throat hurt, but I could speak at full volume. I turned around and looked at the house. The windows were dark and I couldn't see the instruments. I wiped sweat from my face and started walking. I didn't feel safe until I reached the corner and turned onto another street. My legs were shaky and my hands trembled. I tried to think of what had happened back there, but I couldn't form any explanation. I kept walking until I saw other people and heard the sound of cars passing by. My chest still felt tight, but I was no longer trapped. I tried not to think about that place again. I just wanted to go home.